I call the special meeting of the Mountain View Town Council to order on June 1st, 2026 at 6:30 p.m. Will you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Mitchum,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Algeen,
Here.
Councilmember Bailey,
Here.
Councilmember Davis,
Here.
Councilmember Debner,
Here.
Councilmember Lasher, Councilmember Randolph.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Do any council members wish to remove an item from the consent agenda or make any other requests for modifications of the agenda? If so, please raise your hand to be recognized. Hearing no objections to the agenda, we'll consider it approved by unanimous consent. Regarding recusals and conflicts of interest, I will recuse myself at the end of the meeting for the new complaint against me from Melinda Plemmel, as I have a conflict of interest there. Do any other council members wish to declare a conflict of interest regarding anything on the agenda? Mayor Pro Tem?
I also will remove myself from recuse myself regarding the complaint.
That being the case, then, since the Mayor Pro Tem will not be chairing that agenda item 15, do we have a motion to have another council member chair agenda item 15 and 16?
Kathleen?
Would you like to make a motion?
Oh, I make a motion to have Kathleen do that.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Will the clerk please, any discussion? Will the clerk please call the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Algeen,
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Debner,
Yes.
Councilmember Randolph.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. So we're moving straight into agenda item 5, which is our MVCC zoning project. And we have some special guests with us here tonight. Welcome Tom Kaufman and Will Sherman from Land Advisors Organization. We appreciate your presence with us tonight. They're here to give us a brief presentation prior to the beginning of the workshop, which the rest of our town attorney will handle. They're speaking to the issue of what's viable from a commercial development perspective. Partly because we've heard some doubt from council members and the public about whether or not new commercial establishments that produce revenue for the town would find it profitable to be located in our commercial streets. And we can add an additional 5 minutes or 10 minutes onto your presentation at the end if we need to ensure that we have enough time for what you've planned as well. So I really appreciate both of you being here tonight, and I'll give you the floor.
Thank you very much for your time. Well, pleasure to meet you all, council and residents of Mountain View. We're here with the Land Advisors Organization. We're a nationwide land brokerage and consultancy. As the name would suggest, we specialize in land and we prefer it to be developable. So we mostly work on, in a lot of outlying areas. We're in 31 different markets and we have 120 employees nationwide, covering those different areas. And again, we focus on, development potential and assessing the viability of what can be done with a given piece of property. We're definitely in support of some of the zoning reform that's being proposed here in Mountain View, because we believe strongly that the town could greatly benefit from it and that these corridors are ideally located for some sort of commercial and mixed use development to boost your guys' revenue and more importantly, make this place livelier and more inviting for young families and young people to come here to grow and to prosper. So we've got 10. Am I controlling this? Or?
No.
Oh, you are. Yeah, go to the next. So basically, we've broken this out into kind of 10 different slides. There's a bit of a history component here with just, kind of research that we were able to kind of find on the internet with kind of where the current population sits, where the current vehicular count is on 44th and on Sheridan, and so on and so forth. So we'll just kind of quickly get through the first part and then leave a little bit more time for the latter half, which is a little bit more of the, creative side of this. So Mountain View is, obviously comparable to other kind of small, jurisdictions in this area. Edgewater is a great comparable. And we've definitely, as a firm, have observed a lot of different areas like Mountain View and like Edgewater, both in Colorado, in different mountain towns and other kind of smaller outlying jurisdictions, also in other states that have really benefited from, mixed use corridors and, utilization of urban renewal authority dollars, TIF, and other financing mechanisms to help drive thoughtful growth and thoughtful development, in these areas. And so the 2024 comprehensive plan definitely supported some growth and diversification. And there was, when that plan was then proposed, it was, I guess, as we've come to know, there was some pushback on, whether or not commercial development or any sort of redevelopment was actually viable. We know that the majority of the people that live in Mountain View leave every single day and come back every single night. And so we definitely think that that alone usually tells you that there is obviously an opportunity to retain some of those people during the day and to keep them around if such a high proportion are leaving and coming back. That usually can mean that some essential services might not be in close proximity. It could mean that their favorite restaurant is just on the other side of town. You never know really until, you dig a little bit deeper and understand exactly, how many people are leaving, how many people are going. We know that number is very, very high. 88% is basically everybody. And so that's, would lead you to believe that there's probably a small gap that can be filled with, again, even if it's a local convenience store or, some sort of a bar, restaurant, or anything that can maybe pick up a few residents, dinners every, a few times a week or something of the like there. Next slide, please. So we definitely think that there's next one, sorry. So we definitely kind of know based on these numbers that, again, there's a much larger daytime population than there is a permanent residency. We also can see on the far left that there are a ton of cars passing through this very small concentrated area every single day. I myself am 35 years old. Even when I was parked out back waiting for this to start, saw a number of young families my age, walking around, walking their dogs, taking their kids out for a stroll. And we know that, again, if people are walking around and people are, able to get around, that they most likely could use a place to go. And so I think that historically, there's been a lot of tax dollars that have been generated just from cannabis sales and things of that nature, fast food and so on and so forth. When you actually live in an area and you can see the residents interacting with it and you can kind of get an idea of the demographics, that, again, there's probably an opportunity there to expand upon some of these different revenue streams and get a little bit more diversity. So again, this is just kind of just outlining some of the more of the numbers on the population. I'm assuming this is going to be publicly available. If anybody wants to look at this, after the meeting, they can dig into these numbers a little bit more in detail. Next one. Next one. Keep going. So these are a couple of different things that we thought were kind of like immediately that we noticed that Mountain View did not have much of, that we kind of immediately have seen huge success in Cherry Creek with their farmers market. The Pearl Street Farmers Market is one of the biggest in the state. And it's been proven up to this point that basically as local businesses get exposure into farmers markets and it's a natural transition for them to then move from something that is not physical to something that is. So that can definitely be a great opportunity to even just get an introduction without having to dip your whole foot into the lake or the pond or the river to basically get some brief exposure. We think that this is a great idea and it's pretty low cost as far as the town is concerned to basically just you open up a parking lot and start establishing small businesses in the area and get them excited about coming to Mountain View on the weekends, get the residents excited about coming out to these events. And similarly, it's a great way to also then assess what the neighborhood and what the area really demands and what it really needs, because the businesses that have the most success there are going to most likely be the ones that have the greatest opportunity to be successful with a physical location in the area. A friend of mine runs the farmers market out near Lowry. Again, same deal. They were able to get some of the restaurants that are now a part of their food court started off as farmers market stands that then again gain traction, and then boom, they get the confidence that they can be successful, and then they want to join in. Keep going, please. So obviously this is the main area that we're talking about. And everybody in this room and everybody listening in is very familiar with these, with these areas more so than I am, frankly. But, I think back to when you look at 44th and you look at Sheridan, there's a great chapter in The Life and Death of Great American Cities by Jane Austen, which I hope some people in this room have read, that basically talks about how the vibrance of a sidewalk is a great indicator for how a city is actually living and how pleased its residents are with living there. And the central thesis of that is that the more people that are walking around, the safer your area is, and the more excited they are to get out of their house and to go out and interact with other residents and other folks at different local businesses and different local establishments. I think that anybody that's walked along Sheridan, or walked along 44th up there probably doesn't feel the safest. I think at any point of the day, whether there's high traffic or it's late at night, I think that definitely tells you that there is an opportunity to improve and there's an opportunity to get better. And that's a really easy litmus to see. Like I mentioned before, when just driving around Mountain View at this time of the evening, you can see people are out and about. It's not like they're all, recluses, just sitting in their home, petting their cats. They would get out of the house if there were places to go. And so that's why, Land Advisors has sold many, many mixed use sites over the years. We've been around since 1987. And so we definitely have seen enough data in areas like this. I think a great comparable would be look at how busy the parking lot is at the Edgewater Marketplace. That place has had some turnover as far as, kind of local businesses moving in and out, but the attendance still remains the same. There's still people gathering, and there's still people that are coming over from across Sheridan to get in there that live in Sloan's Lake and that live off of Lowell and these other streets and these other areas. And it's a gathering space. And so that's why when you look at some of these design components, we definitely are huge, supporters of bringing people to the area and making sure that they feel safe. So whether that's, again, adding some sort of insulation from 44th or Sheridan to get them a little bit further off the road so they don't feel like they're going to get sideswiped, or adding additional lighting or a bike lane or something, we definitely think that this corridor is well traveled enough already. And so now it's really just about really shaping the block of ice to make sure that it looks and feels like something people want to interact with. So again, this is basically, just kind of summarizing a lot of what I just said. We think that this starts off by being resident oriented because they're the people that actually live here, that need to support it, that need to be, interacting with it the most. And then the next phase of that is then assessing, okay, well, where are people coming from and what are some potential gaps that they have in their areas with, as far as retail, neighborhood, amenities or whatever, that they could actually even be drawn to come to Mountain View from outside of the area as well. So those are the two corridors, obviously, that we're mainly talking about, 44th and Sheridan. Next, please. And so these are just some of the things that we pulled right off the shelf. Again, these are all, we didn't invent any of these, but these are basically just some thoughts that we thought, could be in, some discussion points that could be included as the town or city is assessing what to do and how to approach some of these areas in the way of, redevelopment and incentivizing some activity to be spurred here. So how does this all happen? So we think it kind of starts from the top, and that is not really even anything that's codified or anything like that. That's really just with a culture and a leadership fit. Is staff and is council, are they conveying the same message to the residents and to any, developers that come in and want to propose a different option? It's very important at this stage to have a unified front because you want to have consistency so that when people start talking and people start, having things carried around town and as far as word of mouth, that there's a unified message that, hey, they are pro this, they are against that. And it's not even about being open to everything as much as it is just being consistent with what you are open to. We think the next part of this is obviously then in what does come into the code. What is going to be written and what is going to be publicized that people can reference so that, again, that unified front has consistent answers and consistent feedback with different projects and different things that come through. These don't necessarily all come down just to money. That's one thing that Jane Austen outlines very beautifully in that first chapter of the book, is that keeping a clean sidewalk doesn't cost a lot of money. People, if they take pride in where they live, they will pick up a piece of trash and throw it away. And it doesn't cost you anything to really walk anywhere. And so that's, I think, the other part of this is that people automatically think, well, oh, these developers are going to come in and make all this money and then they're going to tear my town all apart. It's not really not that way. It's not a one-to-one. We need to think about it holistically to say, not only how is this going to benefit from a dollars and a monetary perspective, but how is it going to, be beneficial in a life, benefit? Are people's lives going to be better off than they were if these projects and these different things are brought into the area? So then this permitting process is obviously an extension of zoning. And then, the next part is kind of the nitty gritty of, okay, well, how does this all get paid for? So we think that there are definitely some opportunities just with different programs that the state already has in their purview right now, other grant programs that are already out there. Urban renewal authorities are not a new concept or a new tool that have, been invented in the last 5 years. They've been around forever. And we definitely think that just based on the activity that's already here and the opportunity that is out in front of us, that's definitely a viable option. And that could help offset some of these costs, and namely also incentivize folks to come into the area and start investing, their time and their dollars into Mountain View. Next slide, please. So these are some of these outlined in a little bit more detail into obviously the 4 different buckets. This is just how we kind of, map them out. But feel free to put any of these into the internet and read up more extensively on them. They all are unique and they all are different, and they all definitely serve a unique purpose. Enterprise zones, for example, are different than opportunity zones. And, the Downtown Development Authority is different than an EDC. So I think that it's important, again, and back to having a unified message. I think that's also just kind of key as residents get more educated on this. They're asking the right questions, and obviously staff on the other side of it is, again, speaking in a palatable way that everybody understands and that everybody can kind of reference back to, so they don't have to take thorough notes at every single meeting. They can go back and do some research on their own as well. So this is kind of a roadmap of, kind of everything that we just kind of blazed through. But this kind of starts off with a URA resolution, and then obviously ends with, obviously an opportunity zone overlay, and, kind of talking to actual construction and contractors to see what can and cannot be done. We understand firsthand that utility constraints and, dollars and all these things are very real. And so there's no reason to kind of jump into something and only to find out that it's going to be way too long and way too costly. So, again, we've mapped this all out step by step. It's obviously definitely not a linear path. It's a meandering switchback up a mountain, but we definitely think that these are kind of the key components that people should pay reference to as we, again, hopefully step into the future and move this process along.
When you guys are considering all this, we wanted to give you enough tools, so we gave you like a pre-packet with a bunch of the demographics, kind of an action plan here. You've got 2 separate corridors that need to be handled a little bit differently. And how do you make your residents still feel as a member of a small town and still have that, the unity that you guys are all supporting now by being here in the leadership roles? So how do you keep that identity of Mountain View? How do you keep it from, you're not going to get a big box because from that map, you just don't have the space. We're not going to get a hardware store, all the grocery, the Whole Foods, some of those aren't. So we've kind of dug down a little bit into there, some of the retail types that do help people gather, that bring families together, that keep your community together. And the people that are coming in, Will mentioned that 88% of the people leave, 114% come back in to work that aren't members here. They're coming, usually they're a little bit higher demographic. If you look at that zone where you're at, the income here is a little bit lower than what surrounds you. And those people are here, and why not get them to stay for a dinner? Why not get them to stay for coffee or come for breakfast? You know, and if you're pedestrian or bike friendly, if you make Ames a little calmer, you know, and you backload stuff with a common parking down Sheridan, you know, you slow some of that stuff. Like Will said, that sidewalk really makes a big impact. And I think it's two different unique sidewalks going down 44th and 77th. But hopefully we're giving you guys enough tools to, so you can look out there and say, here's a lot more than we probably need. But we've got the things to look at. We know what our residents want. And then you guys get to use it and pick and choose what uses, what tools you use, you know, and how that gets done. So we're just here to kind of support the small town growth, to keep the community together and give you guys some, you know, plan where if development comes and it comes in a hodgepodge, you're going to get a hodgepodge. You're going to get bits and pieces. You're not going to get a true community setup unless the leadership kind of takes on this role and listens to the town and listens to what you guys want and pulls that together. And then you got a united front where people are going to come over here from across the street and say, this is a cool little town.
Mhm.
You know, they're going to wake up and surprise, wow, this is, you know, I want to be in this town. And, you know, it's just kind of a neat feeling when you see that happen. It can be part of that and you guys can pave the road, but don't let it happen to you. Have a game plan. It doesn't have to start tomorrow. Our roadmap was 2 years out. But at least have that. So when the people come in, you guys are ready for them. You know how to handle them. You know what you want. And more importantly, you know what you don't want coming in here. So if you guys have questions, we would love to stick around and, you know, answer those. But we just want to make sure as you're going through this process that you have, you know, all the bullets in the belt, all the tools in, you know, in the workshop so that you guys are aware of what's out there, how close you are, how Wheatridge has some of the people that you could reach out to as well. And to duplicate, you're not reinventing the wheel. We took information from about 5 different cities, Edgewater being one of them, which were smaller, surrounded by other cities, and had the same impact of when they wanted to take control of their future and not let the future happen to them. So I don't know if you guys would have questions or concerns or thoughts, but we do have both before in today's presentation available for the public. If you guys want to look at those, use them. Call us if you need a resource. We love doing this. We're the #1 seller of master plan communities, and you guys have a great master plan community here. It's just, you know, 85% of the way built out right now. So,
Thank you so much. Council, do council members have any questions for Tom and Will?
Not at this time.
Councilmember Bailey?
I know like Sheridan is a commercial corridor and it's great. It's also a state highway, which also has its own set of issues. And the fact that the sidewalk is so incredibly narrow on Sheridan. I feel
the
like
street too.
the street itself is narrow, the sidewalk is super narrow, like nobody wants to walk up and down a Sheridan and it doesn't have to. So that seems like a really tough problem to solve. I'm just kind of curious what people would do in that kind of scenario, because I just don't know how you.
So some of those scenarios is street calming. I know you guys got a camera up there now. Every 32 feet, there's another tree blossoming. You know, you pull like Arby's is set back. You go to a 0 lot line down Sheridan. And if you do it right, maybe you can pull in a bike or walk trail off of Sheridan just a little bit back on the town ground where you don't have to interfere. If you ever work with the state or CDOT, it takes a long time. It's a lot of work. But if you can get a trail either down Ames or down the front of there where you could put in a bike walkable, pulled off Sheridan where you're not, you know, those guys, you know, sometimes I live down by the lake and they're flying down 75, 80 miles an hour. And you want those trees every 32 feet. So that calms a little bit, you know, blade signs where they got to they see it in between the trees, they'll slow down a little bit. Like Will said, that sidewalk really makes it pop as to, hey, this is something special. And then you pull the buildings to the front, you park it in the back, and you create the traffic flow to go up Ames or down through the alleyway to kind of mentor that. And then you can park it in a common spot and you have this, you know, a nicer feel where you're maximizing the commercial, but you're also trying to slow down that state because that is a big issue. 44th, that's why we did a 44th and a Sheridan because, you know, I know how difficult Sheridan is and it's narrow. I've got a Tahoe and it's even tough to stay in the lane,
Mhm.
you know, going down that. But if you do that and you backfill it and you use the control to have people come through your town, they're slowed down, they're pulled off that highway. And, yeah, I'm thinking Ames for a good north-south commuter connector. And you make that more, you know, resident parking, maybe a parking pass on there, but then the bike lane and walkable down there. And now you got your residents kind of coming out in a safer zone that you've pulled back off that, the vicious harshness of, you know, a state highway and into your community. So that there's some of the things that could kind of help do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you so much for your time. I know, Councilmember Debner.
I just want to thank you. And I was going to ask, is the presentation going to be posted on the website and shared afterward? Because I'd love to check out those links to all those resources.
Yeah.
There's quite a few.
It
Yeah.
takes a while. We kind of flew through it, you know, Will's, you know, very efficient. But yeah, there's a lot of resources that, you know, that are available to you, and hopefully you can reach out to all of them.
Almost too many sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, pick and choose the tools you guys want to use. You know, what's going to work for you guys and make that work.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from our community members? Okay,
Well, hopefully we gave you some more tools, some more information and things to discuss, and we'll be around if you need us, but if not, we'll get out of your way and let you guys kind of move on with your meeting.
sounds great.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Thank
much
you.
for
Thanks,
coming
guys.
forward, sharing your expertise with us. We will go ahead and it's 56, so we're going to give you a lot more extra time.
Oh,
Don't worry. Just for the record.
thank you.
So our town attorney is going to take it from here.
Cool. Thank you. And we're gonna pick up where we left off, but before we do that, I want to just turn it over to our town administrator really quick to see if you had any comments on the dimensional standards, anything that you wanted sort of build on from this presentation or sort of where we landed. No? Okay. Okay, cool. We can come back to it. If you want to. So where we landed in these dimensional standards, just as a recap, is that we really ended up restricting the bulk and mass of buildings in town. That's where you can place the building on the lot and the actual dimensions to which the building can encapsulate within that lot. And so we did make those a bit more restrictive than they actually are today.
This is page 17, just FYI.
Thank you.
Is your mic on? Is her mic on? Okay. So for both commercial and residential?
Yeah, so for residential, definitely we made things a bit more restrictive. For commercial, we made things, I'd say it's pretty similar to what we have today. I'd say the biggest difference with commercial is really that we're introducing new standards that don't exist today, like that maximum impervious surface area. But certainly the primary restrictions came in those two residential districts, R1 and MXN. And so just to recap, what this really does is it increases the price per square footage in some ways. And so we're kind of starting there as far as new builds go, where we're kind of taking some of the pressure of redevelopment out of our residential areas. And the reverse way of saying that is that we're making it more costly to redevelop those areas and a little bit harder for the market to fill the sort of current drive. And so that's our setup here in these dimensional standards. And now we're going to layer on from there. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because we have a lot to get through today. And I'm hoping that we can get through all of the development standards today. So my approach will be that I'm going to be highlighting some areas along the way. If you see something that I scroll past and you have a question or you have a comment or some sort of objection to what's written, please stop me. Otherwise, I've got a couple areas I've pulled out. Okay, so the first place I want to talk through is these exceptions to dimensional standards. And again, I'm not going to go through each exception here. I'm going to pull out some of the ones that I think are going to be most useful that are kind of big policy changes that I took just from sitting in the room for the last several years, but I'm not sure really where the pulse stands with council. And so the first is this exception for accessory dwelling units to maximum floor area ratio. And so what this exception does here at the bottom of the screen is basically say you get an extra or a free 400 square feet that you can add to your lot if it's for an accessory dwelling unit. So we talked about a couple months back, maybe becoming an ADU friendly community. This is one way you do that to try to incentivize those ADUs and make it easier for them to be built. That also does help with some of your affordable housing. So the question for council is, do you want to keep this exception? Or do you have any questions? And I guess I'll flip it actually. Do you have any objections to keeping this?
Would the same incentive for like the garages facing the alley still apply? And so it's an addition, so because that's an incentive, at least that was current. I don't know if we're proposing to do that or keep that, but I just want to know what I'm answering.
Yeah, good question. So no, as far as the maximum floor area ratio, it would have to be the actual dwelling unit. So it would have to be the accessory dwelling unit. It wouldn't include the garage area. So it'd be separated out. As far as front loading versus alley loading, this whole code is geared towards alley loading. So it's geared towards pretty much all the suggestions you heard there. And what that means, and we'll talk about it when we get down to access and connectivity today, is that we're requiring or incentivizing, depending on the district, that you take your drive or your vehicular access from the alley rather than the front yard. And that means you have less breaks in your sidewalk so that pedestrians are competing less with vehicles.
Right.
So kind of two different standards, but intertwined.
But do you recall how much that allowance was for incentivizing the alley facing garages? Because I'm just trying to put it all together with like maximum square foot lot coverage. If you allowed for both exceptions, what does that look like?
Okay, so
Does that make sense?
I think we're potentially confusing two different standards. So
I know they're two different standards, but I'm saying if you allowed for one standard and you also allowed for this other standard, what would be the max lot coverage if both were true?
So a couple different points is that this is only floor area ratio.
Okay.
So it's only the actual square footage, buildable square footage you're permitted. So if we go back up to the table, what this exception is just to this column. It's just to the maximum floor area ratio.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Well, and I guess something for council to consider is we have been asked by residents if we were going to be an ADU certified community. So how would that factor into us getting that DOLA designation for the grant money?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really do believe that you have to do something more than just permitting accessory dwelling units to be considered an ADU friendly community. I think this would be maybe your minimum, but potentially not even enough, but it's a great starting spot, if nothing else. It's a good question. So any objections to that standard? Okay, then we're gonna keep cruising. Again, stop me as we go because there's a lot of substance here. I'm not gonna be going through each one of these lines, again, unless they're drawn out. Okay, so the next spot I wanted to stop is 16430 and the applicability. So we've talked about this a couple times with subdivision. We're gonna come to it again in our next work session when we talk about procedures. But really what we're trying to correct as far as the subdivision goes is that right now you have multiple lots of record. And for a very long time in the town, you said if it's a lot of record, meaning it was a historically platted lot, you don't have to subdivide it. You can build a building right on top of a lot line. That was the town's historical practice. So when you look at your subdivision map now, you'll see a bunch of buildings parked right on top of lot lines. And that makes it very difficult for your planners. It also makes it difficult for your property owners to know how the standards apply to them. So I am suggesting that throughout this code, we're going to kind of grant exemptions so that those folks can just come into compliance, so that they can just bring a subdivision application and say, hey, like I know my house is right in the middle of this lot line. I want it fixed. I want to remove that lot line in the middle of my parcel. Will you make it easy for me? So that's kind of what we're trying to do here. And so what this is saying is that you get an exemption from all of these subdivision standards if that's what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to vacate that lot line right in between, then you don't have to even look at these subdivision standards, meaning we're not going to make you pay for a new sidewalk. We're not going to make you pay for, roadway improvements or drainage improvements or stormwater improvements. because you're getting rid of that lot line. So the question for council is, do you have any objections to that exception?
Can you please review again? Because I'm a little lost on that.
Yeah, yeah, let me try to show you. I think I
Maybe,
have.
yeah, an example, like a real life.
Yeah,
Or
let's see if I can.
hypothetical.
This is a great example. So let me stop sharing, reshare here. And if this is your house, I'm not trying to pick on you. All right, let's look at this parcel here. Not only, this is two parcels here. This is the lot of record right here. So it's actually two lots. And for a very long time, without going through subdivision, we've just said, we're gonna consider you one lot, even though you actually have two lots. This property not only has two lots, they have two different zonings on the lot. So that makes it really confusing to know what that property owner can do. Makes it really confusing for your staff to know what to do. What we're saying is, hey, we want you to come into conformance. We want you to be treated like a typical lot in the town. We're gonna let you remove this lot line here, and we're not gonna make you repave the alleyway or repave the sidewalk when you're doing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Does that apply to just homes that have historically built on that? Or would that apply for future lots? Like,
yeah, it's a great question. It actually only applies to your lots of record. So a lot of record is a lot that was created in your initial plat in the town. So when you became a town, you had to plat all the streets and all the lots. So it applies to those lots that haven't gone through subdivision yet, which is most of the town, because there is no requirement to do so for most of the time. Any objections with that? Okay. Okay. And Doc, I can't see you, but just yell at me if you've got something.
He's not.
Okay. Okay, so what these standards generally are saying is a sort of principle of land use in Colorado, and that is that development has to pay its own way. In other words, when you're coming in to develop, you're the one that has to pay for all of the sort of public improvements that are related to that development, including things like your sidewalk, the road in front of you, stormwater drainage, that kind of stuff. That's what these standards are getting at. So that's just a summary, no question there, but let me know if you have any.
For both residential and commercial.
Correct. Exactly right. Okay. I'm just gonna keep breezing through unless someone's got questions. So we're gonna get through or go to stormwater and drainage. And again here, what the summary is of these standards is that we're trying to internalize the stormwater impacts of development within the site to the maximum extent possible. What that means is we want the water to filter within that lot, not to go to hard pavement and down your gutters. So we want the actual site to take in that drainage and filter it naturally within the site. That's the goal. I will tell you that these requirements are fairly restrictive, but I've known it's been a big issue in the town, so that's sort of why I drafted it in that way. Any questions, comments there, or concerns? Okay, right on. We're gonna keep breezing through. We've got some juicy ones coming, so I'm trying to build in some time. Okay, we're gonna go to access and connectivity. I think this relates a lot to the presentation we just heard, and I'll share some graphics, which are probably not the most elegant, but actually I need to first stop sharing here, 1 second. Alrighty. Should have gone to art school. Okay, so I'm just kind of gonna walk you through the standard that we had on the screen. So the black line is showing your existing alley. You see it dump right into West 44th. That's where it dumps today. So what this standard is saying is that we're gonna actually let you vacate that red portion of your alley. We're gonna say you don't need, if you're on West 44th and your alley is currently dumping into West 44th, we're gonna let you vacate that portion of the alleyway, meaning it's gonna go equally to each property owners on both sides so that they could potentially develop that entire site without any roadway in between them. And instead, what we're gonna require is a bump out, that's the blue, basically a new alleyway that's going to connect on a local street instead. And so this standard is allowing for larger mixed-use developments to be developed unified and to have less vehicular intrusions between them. So you could get, for instance, a big plaza there for pedestrians or for folks to be able to meet and greet instead of a place for vehicles. So it's basically saying we're going to stop the vehicle at the lot. We're going to make them go around rather than through. And that standard only applies here when an alleyway dumps out onto West 44th. So that stands kind of confusing, so I wanted to walk through it. So the question for council is, do you want to keep it? Do you have any objections, I should say, to keeping it?
So I have a question.
Yeah, please.
Can you all hear me? Would that redirect traffic onto Ames? So that would increase more traffic flow down Ames Street. Is that correct?
You'd get that alleyway traffic coming out to Ames. Primarily, the intention is that you're really only taking that for folks who are visiting that particular site to get into that parking garage, most likely, or parking structure. And so it shouldn't be, if anything, I think it's going to slow vehicles down because it has a bump out, makes you turn. But the short answer to the question is like, yeah, it will a little. It's
Okay.
going to increase traffic in that tiny little segment by a little bit. And let me show it again.
Is that for every alley that pours onto 44th or?
Correct. Every alley that pours onto 44th. And so basically what the vehicle is doing is it's going to drive on that black line. It's hopefully going to find parking in the back of this lot so that, again, we don't have that interruption between sidewalk and vehicle. So we're trying to remove that throughout so that it's just pedestrian enters building rather than pedestrian crosses street, crosses parking lot, then goes into building. So we're trying to restructure that throughout the town. And part of, to be able to do that, yeah, you're going to dump them out onto Ames in this scenario. But really, if they were going through anyway, and they weren't just going there to park, they're either going to come back out the way they came in, or they're going to go down to Ames, like you said. But it's really just going to be this lot that's affected because they're going to be able to turn and go on to West 44th there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess my concern is that if they're going down the black line, right?
Yeah.
They would, is there the potential for increased traffic to go down 43rd and 43rd, right? And increase the traffic on all of the streets on 43rd? And how would we increase traffic, right? And also, what about like the need for speed bumps or to control the speed?
I think the answer is yes. It probably will do some traffic shifting. The goal is that through this land use code is that we're trying to shift traffic away from your pedestrian areas more than anything. But some of that displacement will mean that they're going to be collected on a local street. So yes, is going to be part of your answer. The second part of your answer related to traffic calming really won't be a part of this process because it has to do with the roads you own. It's not controlling private property and putting regulations on it, like zoning. It's controlling right-of-way and deciding how you want to handle your right-of-way. And so that would be a separate project that council can certainly take on. I will tell you the fairly expensive projects, but you can definitely take on traffic calming kind of techniques.
But
Mhm.
once we saw the results of this change, we could start to say, what are the tools that might be available to us, like speed bumps
Right.
or other types of things?
Yeah, because I mean, it's very difficult to make a left turn on that Ames onto 44th. Like,
Yeah, it's impossible.
it's terrible.
Yeah, it's also trying to alleviate not only the issues you have with pedestrians and vehicles, but also vehicles to vehicles, because you've got to really fly out of that alleyway.
I think Councilmember Bailey had a question.
Oh, please.
Did you say that you were proposing the structuring of a brand new alley or something? I missed that part.
I
so-
should have got that back up. So
Sorry.
that blue line,
Uh-huh.
the private developer who would bring the application to vacate would have to create a new alleyway essentially to bump out to that local street. And primarily the reason you have to do that is actually for like fire and police.
Where does that, I'm having the worst time visualizing where this actual alleyway would go.
Yeah.
Given what's on the ground right now, and I just am not a visual person, and so
Yeah, totally.
I can't see it, which is hard for me, sorry.
Yeah, no, so the new alley is actually that blue.
But what
And
is,
so-
what is that there right now? Is
Yeah,
that just part of the lot?
that's
current
a
lot?
vacant lot. That's been
Okay.
used as a parking lot. All of
Okay, so
those
that's just a
are.
vacant lot right now. That's
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So
But
part of
Yeah.
vacant lot gets
And
turned.
I like
into an
this
alley.
graphic because you can see in some ways how much you've catered to vehicles, right? This is some of your primest real estate in town. The land coverage is about 80% for parking for vehicles.
Well, part of that is because somebody owns a large percentage of that property, right?
Right, but
It's
part of it
mostly-
is the regulations
Yeah, it's
require
mostly
it.
as we haven't allowed, we haven't allowed development because we haven't updated our land use, so they haven't
Yeah.
done anything with it.
Yeah.
I guess I'm very much in support of this. I think it's a real minor change, but it's gonna have advantages for development and for pedestrian walkways.
what my worry is, or my concern is that we're looking at Ames, but we're not addressing Benton, Chase, Eaton, and Fenton. And there are, it doesn't look like that. There's not available space
Right.
on those three. And how does that impact those streets and the residents?
Yeah, it's a great question. So part of that answer will come today, and I'll tell you
Okay.
how those standards are going to be layered. But part of the answer is that to be able to make some of these, all of these changes enacted in practice, you would need really big, large scale redevelopment, and you're not going to get it all at once. It's going to be over a very long time. And throughout that time, you'll be able to continue to tweak this code. So maybe it's that you get your first development in, they take advantage of this standard, and they make it sort of one big development that's pedestrian friendly. And you guys decide, hey, it's dumping way too much traffic onto our local streets. Let's actually yank that standard. We don't want it in any of these future alleyways. That's definitely possible.
Another question is, okay, so we know there's going to be increased traffic down Ames or those streets, but we don't have any idea how much increased traffic we'll be dealing with.
Yeah, it's a good question. And you'll really only be able to find that out as a part of a site plan application when they're required to give you a traffic impact study. So that's the time when they actually say like, hey, we're going to take advantage of this study and here's where we're putting all of our traffic. And we think these roadways can handle it, or we don't think they can handle it, and we're going to have to upgrade them.
May I ask, what does that mean to upgrade them?
In practice in Mountain View, it'll be incredibly difficult because you don't have room to add sort of lights or additional lanes. And so really that development is going to have to shift all of their traffic to the arterials. They're going to have to shift it all to West 44th and Sheridan.
Oops. And what if they don't shift it? What if they start parking on Ames and Benton and Chase?
Yeah, so there's two
I
different.
mean, there's no parking in the town as it is.
Yeah, two different standards there, and we're going to get to one very shortly on parking. So I'll
Okay.
punt on that one for now.
Okay.
But as far as the actual traffic, it's a consideration as a part of that site plan application. And so depending on who approves it, and if it's a major site plan, and again, we'll get that in the next work session, it's probably going to be council that approves it. So you'll sit there, you'll review the application, you'll review the traffic impact study, and you'll say, hey, I don't think this meets our standards. You're dumping way too much traffic onto our local streets.
I will say when the daycare was built on Eaton, it was supposed to be, parking was supposed to be protected, and it's a nightmare when holidays come. They park everywhere and there is no parking.
So we'll get to that very shortly. For this standard, any objections? It sounds like we might have one. Are there?
Yeah, I just am not comfortable. I think I still need to process
Okay.
it and study it more, because I'm just going to make this point. There are 5 of us at the table that live on the 41st block. There are 2 council members that live on the 43rd, between 43rd and 44th. That community, those blocks have a different experience in Mountain View. They deal with different 44th traffic. They deal, commercial properties, but butting up against their backyard. So I really need to process that more, because I don't want it to be even more of a hardship or impact for those residents.
So why don't we do this? We can bring it back up and consolidate it, and I can add it to my list. That
Thank you.
sounds right.
There are, I mean, in terms of parking though, I mean, like one with what the gentleman said at the presentation was like, you could always do, resident parking permits, just like lots of parts of Denver do it. I know we don't want to be Denver, but like, I mean, that you could have it both ways.
Yeah. And we're gonna get there very shortly, for sure. And I think it's a good idea. Okay, I am gonna move us on though. Okay, let's talk about pedestrian circulation. So I'm gonna keep that standard in there for now because I only heard one objection. It sounds like you just need some more time to think about it. So I'll add it to my list and we can talk about it at Consolidate.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll talk about pedestrian circulation now, and this also goes largely to what the presenter was sharing about. Again, I'm gonna share a quick graphic to illustrate all of these standards. Okay, so what we're doing here is trying to create a little bit of separation between the roadway and where folks are walking. And so we're also expanding the sidewalks from your typical about 3 feet to make them 5 feet across town for those newer or for all new developments. And so you'll see here where the right of way kind of stops, where the sidewalks begin and where the private property begins. And for the most part, that sidewalk is going to become part of the town's right of way. We're going to have them dedicate over that additional land as a part of their application. So you'll take ownership of it. What this standard is stating as well is if there's hindrances there and we can't get like kind of live in our perfect world, we're going to build that into the standards and we're going to let you push the pedestrian walkways further in if there's, utility poles in the way, but you've still got to do the 5 feet. And if it's purely on private land, we're going to make you do an easement for that land. And then lastly, we're also requiring internal sidewalks, internal circulation, so that folks moving to different buildings within one site have a designated pedestrian access route that doesn't go through parking. So that's what these standards are saying. That's just sort of my summary. Bring them back up. Any questions, objections there? Yeah.
Do we have a sense for like, I'm assuming this is mostly Bible along Sheridan, we're talking here, but do we have a sense for how many sort of utilities are in our way that, I mean, would it look weird? Because if you're hugging the street here, but then you're like over here,
Right.
and then you're running back over here, like, I mean, it would just look really weird. It would be a very weird walking experience.
I agree with you. But unfortunately, the tension is if you don't build it into your standards, you're going to get variances. And what they're going to ask to vary is the size of the sidewalk because you're not moving the utilities because it will cost a fortune.
Oh, right, yeah.
So really the only other way to get around the standard is they're going to come before you and say, hey, there's a utility pole in the way. I need a 3-foot sidewalk here instead of 5. And so what this standard is doing is building it in to say, like, we're not going to allow a variance for that. You've got to have the 5-foot sidewalk. If you have to shift it over away from the utilities, we'll allow that. But we're not going to process a variance to make the sidewalk smaller.
But in real times, like you are going to have that where if you're going to have like this like really wobbly line that goes up and down Sheridan.
You'll get a couple for sure.
Do we know how many utilities are? I mean, do we have a sense for how many impediments we have? Just like the ballparking in our heads.
No, but it's going to be primarily on those commercial corridors.
Yeah.
Which in those sites, they're probably going to be okay with pushing the sidewalk back altogether. And if you get a unified development, then they'll still make it one line because it's cheaper. But if you get hodgepodge, like you're saying, you might have a little bit of a curve.
So from here, from the church to 41st, we're talking about making the sidewalk 5 feet.
Right.
We would be purchasing that property, all the properties.
Not purchasing it, it would be dedicated as a requirement of the site plan application or subdivision application.
So what's another term for that?
Another term for dedication is when
Is that eminent domain?
no.
Okay.
So it's when a private property owner is required to essentially give something for public improvement. So it's sort of similar to paying your own way. The difference here being that we end up owning the land, the town does, but we also take over maintenance for it. So it's kind of a quid pro quo situation. We get the land, we get to do whatever we want with it and adjust our right of way through time as we need to. For instance, if you decide eventually, hey, we're actually going to take out that 1 foot bump out, we don't have enough space, we're going to make the roads bigger. That's an option. Or we're going to actually push the roads in, make them narrower, more narrow, put them on a road diet. You know, there's a whole bunch of options that you can take in the future, and you likely will. So you want the control now, and how you get the control is conditioning it as a part of an application. The exact legal term is called an exaction, and it's quite complicated, but these standards are almost unanimously upheld.
Okay, so if I own the house next door and I'm informed that I need to give up probably 4 feet because the sidewalk's 1 foot, right? 4 feet. Would we consider, or would we be doing any beautification in an attempt to like compromise with the property owners?
Yes, and we'll talk about that very shortly. However, the private property owner would be the one to pay for it at the outset still. So all of the required beautification we have in here, like we have a new requirement for street trees, street lighting, and landscaping, so that 1 foot block is going to have street lighting as it goes, street trees as it goes, and some low shrubbery as it goes as well. It's the private property owner, the developer, that actually pays for that at the outset.
Okay.
But none of this happens unless that property changes hands.
Exactly right.
Status quo is status quo, unless that property is sold, they sell it to the developer.
Exactly right. And that's a huge point throughout this whole process, is that we're not forcing anyone to do anything differently.
Yeah.
We're giving you options and elevating some of the standards for redevelopment.
It's important.
Yeah, it's a huge point. Okay. No objections. I'll move on here. Oof. We're gonna be coming close. Let's see. Okay, so this is where we talk about alley loading. I'm not going to talk about it much other than to say here's where that requirement lives. I do want to spend some time on parking. Okay, so right now, these restrictions mostly mirror what you have today. I mostly just brought it in for what you had today. Your uses aren't 1 for 1, so I had to make some judgment calls along the way. This is a decent amount of parking, for sure. And so when we talk about incentives to redevelopment or elevating the cost of redevelopment, it's largely in this table. If you are requiring, for instance, a retail shop of, I think it's 400 square feet, 300 square feet, to have 1 space per 300 square feet, you're going to get development patterns similar to what you have today. You're going to get pretty small buildings, lots of parking around it, because that's pretty high standard. So let's talk about it, and let's talk about where we want to go. Again, this is basically what you have today. I will tell you that in several of my other jurisdictions, they do it in very different ways. You guys are aware there's been a lot of state law regulation. It's all missed Mountain View because of our population. So we aren't subject to those state law controls, but the state's already stepped in this and saying, hey, we think parking is a real problem. You're taking up so much of the developable lot for parking, and we don't want you to do that anymore. So the state has already come in and said, we want you to get rid of minimum parking requirements in various scenarios. Again, those don't apply to us yet, at least on the state level. But I will tell you, like, these standards, if we want to incentivize certain uses, this is a great place to do it. And so I guess I'll give some examples of how other communities have done it as well. I have other communities that full on exempt their commercial corridors altogether. No parking requirements in your commercial corridors. And that's largely a reflection of historic downtowns. They didn't build for parking. They built all the structures right next to each other. They had some on-street parking, and that was it. And so it's hard to undo that. And so a lot of communities throughout Colorado that were built sort of in that historic mold don't have any parking requirements in their sort of commercial corridors for that reason still today. I have other communities that are still, find parking as a really hot button issue and have kept their parking minimums fairly high and are willing to sue the state over it. So it really has gone in, it goes the whole spectrum for sure. where some communities are saying like, yeah, if we want to lower the cost of development, this is a great way to do it. And if we want to incentivize pedestrians, not vehicles, this is a great way to do it. But I have others who are very concerned about, that parking being spilled over to other areas. And so they've kept higher standards. And there's probably a middle ground there, all that to say. What I would suggest is look at the uses you really want. And if anything, if the council's comfortable with it, reduce those. Or look at the districts where you really want redevelopment and provide some exemptions.
I think my question is, if we're looking at mixed uses,
Mhm.
okay, if we're looking at mixed uses, and we have, let's say, a 2-bedroom apartment, I don't know of anyone who only has one vehicle. Family members have 2, 1 per person, at least. Not very many people have 1 vehicle. And so, and then I also, picture what is happening on Tennyson. Tennyson, you cannot find a place to park. If you do, you're lucky. You gotta be real good at parallel parking, by the way. But you are also looking at parking 2-3 blocks down in residential areas. So who determined that 1 space per family detached? I mean, how did that criteria develop?
So this is a holdover from what you have today. But I will tell you, you are largely very overparked because parking doesn't have to be in a garage. It can also be in the driveway. So if you have a driveway that fits a car and a garage that fits a car, you already have 2 spaces. I think most folks can fit even more vehicles on their lot. When you look at the aerial, at least of Mountain View, it seems like it. I could be wrong. But I'm not sure. I'm guessing this was a requirement from when you first did your zoning. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess where's the rest of council? Is there any places, does council want to look at lowering any of these requirements? Let's just start it there.
So I guess when I think of the comp plan, there was a common theme that our community is interested in, commercial use where it's like a community gathering space. So I guess those are the use case scenarios that I would be interested in incentivizing.
Okay.
And I also think when it comes to resident concern about parking, at a later date, we can always do parking permits. So that way every resident has a guaranteed spot and then our neighbors don't have to worry about not finding a parking spot.
Yeah, absolutely. We could do that. It would live outside of this code, but you can absolutely do a parking permit process. So are there any uses in particular here? Just sticking with you, Councilmember Devner.
Probably
want to loosen the belt straps a bit.
I would say probably the bar, brewery, or distillery, because generally those would bring food and it's enough community space. That's one that just pops out, but I'd be curious to hear if anyone else has thoughts.
Restaurant?
Yep. And for those uses, what type of parking feels appropriate to you? Are we looking at just a light loosening, like giving them another 100 square feet before they've got to build another parking spot? Or are you looking at a big loosening, like doubling the amount of square footage allowed before they've got to build another parking spot?
But our current requirements are extraordinarily car-centered.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
when we had a community member who's an architect look at developing the Benton property that the town purchased, before the town purchased it, she was working with somebody, the prior owner, to try to develop that property. And the reason that they couldn't develop it was because of what was required from the parking. Like,
Yeah.
It wasn't developable.
Essentially, if you don't allow them to go up a lot in stories, which we didn't, and we actually went down, then they're gonna do surface lots because they can't make up the cost of a parking garage. And so those surface lots are gonna take up most of that buildable area. And when you layer that on with our impervious surface requirements now, it's just gonna make the buildable space smaller and smaller.
So it sounds like there's kind of a compromise between parking and height.
Yes.
Huh, that's interesting.
That's one thing.
Definitely.
If you go higher, it's a commercial district. When they do build the underground.
Right. Or structured at least, yeah, on the first level maybe.
Yeah.
Yep.
My understanding after talking to the land advisors is that if we don't go up to 4 stories instead of 3 stories for the commercial and mixed use areas, that it's unlikely that we'll get those restaurants to begin with. So I think if we're not going to be really generous in other areas or revisit that 4-story, 3-story question, we have to really think about what our priorities are.
Yeah, I think right now, as it is currently drafted, you're looking at an extremely high price per square foot. It's probably pushing you out of the Denver metro market as far as the standards lay right now. This is in my view, typically the place where people start loosening first. And then if it gets sort of out of control, they start doing parking permit systems. Or they revert it back and say, all right, we're going to push the brakes again. I will tell you, like, if you did a wholesale exemption and said, hey, like commercial uses in the MXC district, no parking minimums, that would really help the cost per square footage.
And a developer is going to be thinking about parking as well, because they're trying to bring customers. They
Yeah.
have their own incentive that's built in
Totally.
outside of what we require.
The market will build some parking almost always. It won't build this much, that's for sure. And where the market will always build parking is residential, because that's what the market wants.
Mhm.
A garage, and a covered garage especially, is a huge value add for residential. You see that a lot less for something like a yoga studio. And for those kind of like retail uses, it just becomes too expensive per square foot for them to be able to fit in those spaces.
So here's a question I have. If council's direction is that they want to really reduce the parking for bar, brewery, restaurants.
Yeah.
And maybe an eventual hope would be to work with a developer to have multiple restaurants with maybe a common consumption area that's managed by the town. Would that be an incentive to reduce it to no parking for those kinds of things?
For sure.
So that's something for the council to think about too.
Better that as well. Like,
Correct.
do a combination.
Yeah. I agree. Let's go around the table and just ask a broad question. Are you comfortable requiring less parking than what's you have today, essentially, and then which is the same as what's written on the screen? Can I start with you, Councilmember Randolph?
I just know that residents I've talked to do not want really high buildings, so if it's less parking, less parking.
Okay, thank you.
Less parking for sure. It seems odd to me that fast food is 200 and bar brewery is 500. That's a little strange for me. It's almost like they should be flipped, if anything.
Great.
And same with the restaurant.
Okay, so we got 2 less parking. I'll go online. Councilmember Davis?
Well, I think less parking.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember O'Dean?
Yeah, my stance is I don't want higher buildings,
Okay.
so less parking. Is there ever a consideration of, like cutting in, for lack of a better word, okay, sorry, cutting in on 44 so that there is parallel parking like down Tennyson? So that if you're win the lottery and you get to park in one of those spots, you could park there. And also another question I have about permit parking. If I have a permit parking, I lived downtown for a number of years. Yes, I had a permit, but that didn't ensure that I could park in front of my house. I still may have had to park way down at the end of the block and carry my groceries because there wasn't parking available. So having a parking permit is not going to ensure that you're going to have space in front of your home.
Definitely. I think to the first question, we own the right of way. So it kind of goes back to your earlier comment about street calming. It's sort of on the town to expend the resources if it wants to reconfigure its streets in a different way. So the question is,
Your part.
yeah,
I'll
you're
go with that.
okay. So we actually had unanimous there. I'm going to move us along, and what I'll do is I'll sort of redline this in the next draft and just put some proposals in, just sort of lightly loosening the belt straps on the commercial uses. Well, I guess one last question is it just the commercial uses that we're comfortable lowering? Or some of
Yes.
those other use, yes, okay.
Yeah, yes, for commercial, because if we're thinking long-term, I mean, we want additional revenue opportunities with
Okay.
new business.
Does everyone kind of agree with, or is there any objections to that?
What about the ADU friendly jurisdiction? We need to, in order to achieve that designation, we do need to reduce the parking requirements for ADU.
Correct, thank you. So let's talk about that really quickly. So right now you require one additional space for ADUs. Again, this is another place where the state stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. It's illegal. You can't require parking spaces for ADUs. But it again went over our head because we meet the population requirements in the state law. We may though, we're right on the cusp. So that might change eventually. But right now, you require one space per ADU. So I'll ask the question kind of in reverse. Is council comfortable removing that requirement so that no parking is required for accessory dwelling units? And I won't pick on you first this time. I'll start on this side. If it's okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bailey, you wouldn't mind.
I'm kind of on the fence with that. I mean, I have like a love-hate relationship with ADUs. I know the goal of them is like increased density and all that, but I also prefer, those be rented out long-term rather than short-term. And I feel like a lot of times you find out the short-term and then you know people that are actually participating in your community and they're using all your resources. Now we have a lodging tax, at least get some money out of it, but I kind of a lot of with it, so. I'm gonna punt first.
Okay.
Something to think about, like, especially if we're getting a lot of short-term rentals, is you can put a cap on how many STR STR licenses you can have in the community too. So
Yes.
that's an offset.
That's a good point.
There's an ADU, 2 houses down, and that person parks in the alley. There's like space in the alley. So if we're gonna allow an ADU, could we require space for that particular one car
That's
parked in the alley as opposed to on the street?
That's what you require now. You require one off-street parking space per ADU.
Okay,
So it sounds like that you want to keep that standard, is that right?
it would reduce it would limit we would have more parking on the street if we required that. We kept that requirement, correct?
Right.
What's the fallback?
I think it's really going to that sort of being an ADU friendly community. I think it'd be tough to get there with this. I mean, so one parking space, typically minimum, you're looking at $15,000 to $20,000 off-street parking. So when you're looking at a total build out for an ADU, low end 150, you're taking a pretty big portion just for that one parking spot. And so it's really the cost of, again, you're pushing up the cost per square foot of building that additional dwelling unit. And that is in practice going to mean you're going to have less ADUs. And it could mean that DOLA sees that as a pretty big hindrance to being an ADU friendly community.
There's a list of requirements.
Okay,
and
so that's
it's
a
all-
full-
It is an
okay,
absolute
so
black and
that's a
white
full no.
thing, so I
Okay.
understood it, yeah.
Okay.
And we could separate ADU parking from STR parking. Like, not all STRs are in ADUs.
That's a great point.
And so we could say, we're not requiring one parking spot per ADU, but if you want to have an STR license, you have to have parking for your guests.
Yeah, you can do that.
Only issue I see with that is when somebody comes in to build an ADU, it's not always guaranteed to be an STR.
Right.
So
Yeah,
that
they
could
might
be
have a
hard to
problem.
regulate.
They may essentially be practically prohibited to being an STR.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which,
Okay, so I'm gonna keep moving on. We'll come back through. Councilmember Davis, I'm asking the question of whether you're comfortable moving to no parking requirement for ADUs.
I don't know. I think you need a place to park if you're gonna live there.
Okay.
So, no.
Okay, thank you.
I'm okay with no parking space. I think that would be ADU friendly and it just seems like a good compromise because there's a need for housing and there's more space for living.
And it allows our residents to get Prop 123 money to build those spaces, whereas currently with that requirement of the parking spot, they can't get that.
Great.
No parking, but I want to add one other thing. I've been here over 30 years and what has changed in the town is we have more rentals. We have more Airbnbs and now we're going to have ADUs and people come and go. So it's lost, in my opinion, some of the community because people don't want to stay here. They're just coming and partying in the Airbnbs. And I think that's made a big difference in the culture of the town.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
And there's certainly ways we can address some of those policy issues as well. I'm coming back to you, Councilmember Bailey. Looks like we're split here at 2-2.
I see, I mean, I definitely see the need to like, increase density and healthy and the fact that like, if we were any larger, we would have these requirements, unless you wanted to go sue people to get the, you know, to maintain those parking minimums. It's really difficult because it's a complex problem, right? Kind of a wicked problem.
Yeah.
I guess I would lean towards not having a parking requirement. Do we know how much demand you have for our community on getting this go up on 1.23? I know we had an email from one resident, but do you have a sense for like how in demand this is?
Prop 123 or the ADU.
ADU friendly distribution to get the problem.
I've had the one resident reach out about it.
There's been a second resident as well.
Okay, so
I'll share it with you later.
we had a 3-2. I'm gonna go ahead and make the change, but I'll put it on my consolidated list. With that, let's do public comment. And I'll give a little wrap up at the end. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
But just for the workshop topics for the Mountain View Code and Character Project, are there any public comments for that? You can come up to the mic and share your thoughts. Thank you.
Lisa Morath on Ames Street. I have to say that I'm absolutely appalled by the conversation that's going on here and disappointed. You guys have sit there are being disrespectful to the residents that live up and down these streets by sitting there saying that no parking is required. That imposes on the neighbors. When they have not enough parking for the people that are in that resident, then they have to park and impose on their neighbors. Really? Now let's get back over to Ames Street. You guys have been targeting Ames Street and trying to sit there and make a thoroughfare to go down from commercial into the residential areas. Do you guys know what the impact is on the residentials from having commercial traffic going up and down the streets? I do. I live on Ames Streets. I deal with 44th and Sheridan, and nobody here experiences what I do. And nobody here has, other than Leah, has asked about what the impact is going to be on the residents. I am absolutely disgusted right now. And I guess you guys can tell that. You guys need to sit back and think about the impact that you're putting on all of the residents that are going to be impacted by the decisions you're making, because I have not been seeing that right now. I hope you guys rethink about what you've been doing.
Thank you for your comment. Come on up.
I see a couple flaws in the stuff that you've talked about tonight. One of them being that all of our sewers run down the alley, as well as all of our power. So all of a sudden, this is going to become a developer's problem to reroute the sewers. That's a deal. And as far as ADU, I think they should have at least one parking spot. That's just my thought.
Thank you.
My name is Ann Clark. I live on Ames Street. I'm going to try to be calm. I haven't been coming to meetings because I do better if I listen. I too can become very angered by some things that are going on. I understand what we're trying to do regarding the MVCC. I am one of the persons that actually has walked up and down Sheridan as I run for a bus to work downtown, either going to the 38 or the 44. I'm guessing most of the people around here, most of the people in this community have never walked down Sheridan, nor ever walked down 44th. I find it interesting talking about development in this town. It is a small residential community. I realize we need some development. 2012, we voted in marijuana. Some of us have the opportunity to have the benefit of the activity of marijuana places from 7:30 a.m. to 11:55 at night. Some of us have the benefit of the traffic from those. Some of us have the benefit of the traffic from the 41st Avenue Freeway, the Sheridan Freeway, and the 44th Avenue Freeway. Small community. When we have the speakers like we had today, and the attorneys and their analysis, there is never a comparison to a community of 12 blocks. Edgewater's quite a bit bigger. References to Morrison and all these other communities that the specialists that have spoken over the last year are never talking about a 12-block community. I appreciate the time that the council member and the mayor and the attorney and the clerk give, and our staff. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have any other comments or questions from our community members?
Excuse me, Doc's got his hand up.
Councilmember Davis, go ahead.
Yes, point of information for Austin, please. Why do we allow anonymous personal comments? And why do we have residents and business owners identify themselves where they live in a written or person or in Zoom?
So there is a comment in the public comments when we get to that next agenda item that I think you're talking about. Right now, we're still on the workshop. Is that correct, Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Yeah. Can we address that at that point?
Okay.
Thank you. It's right. It's next. Do you have anything else for your workshop?
I will just state we are quite a bit behind schedule. That's okay. We'll make up for it hopefully in the next work session.
Okay.
And I'll go through hopefully the remaining development standards, to which we have quite a few. And we're, I think, getting to the ones that most policymakers find more interesting, just to name it, like landscaping and building design and street lighting and streetscaping and all of those kind of things that we've talked about before. But I will go through them very quickly. So I'll just ask for the next work session, like, please bring your questions, please bring your concerns, because I'll probably hope to spend 20 to 30 minutes max on that. And then we only have that one work session for procedures. And so I'll spend the other half going through procedures.
Should we consider the possibility of adding another half an hour or hour to the training, to the workshops?
Definitely. I think maybe at the next meeting, if we're not able to kind of split it in that way, or if council feels that we're sort of rushing these topics along, let's just push back the process a bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. If there are no, Councilmember Randolph, go ahead.
I feel that it's going pretty fast and some things are unclear. And I know when it was first mentioned we were going to do this, I know resident brought up that they were going to be more involved. What are our options of doing like a meeting with a table and letting residents ask you questions? I think they need to be more involved. This is their neighborhood. And
Yeah, we
I
can-
think I'm seeing some anger because we don't live on their streets. We don't see what happens on their streets, and we need a better understanding of that.
Definitely. We can definitely do that. I think at the consolidated workshop, it might be a good opportunity to do so. And maybe we can structure the room and the workshop a little differently. When we get to that point, I have my list that we've been flagging along the way, of sort of either issues that were sort of split very closely or folks wanted to come back to. So we'll start there. But I'm happy to spend half the time or schedule another consolidated workshop where just residents get to ask their questions. And of course, it's always helpful, like be involved in the process early, come to these workshops. If you have questions, talk to your elected officials, have them ask the question if you're not able to do so during the public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Dubner?
I guess I'm anticipating maybe an additional consolidated workshop, just so we give, you know, the final product or just before the final product, more time for resident input.
Sure.
So do we want to just direct staff to schedule an additional consolidated workshop? I'm seeing some head nods. Can we go around the room and see if that's what we want from every council member? If we schedule an additional consolidated workshop that will give everybody time to look at the entire code as it is. Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis, does that sound
Yes.
right?
Great.
So if everybody's okay, we will move on to agenda item 6, which is our public comment period. And there are 4 written published comments in the packet this month. And they start on page 58. A person who wishes to give public comment must sign up and provide their name, residency status, and contact information prior to speaking. Anonymous comments will not be accepted. All virtual public commenters shall provide the required information prior to be given the floor by using the chat feature on Zoom. All virtual public commenters must have their cameras on for the duration of their comment. The clerk will invite you to be a panelist, which will allow you to turn on your camera. So please accept that invitation when you receive it. Each individual may speak only once during each public comment period. All council members must listen attentively to public comments, but no response shall be given to any public comment except the chair or the council by majority vote may direct staff to follow up on a comment. No person shall be allotted more than 3 minutes. Our clerk will call on people in the room who have signed up first, and then people who are attending remotely. When you're participating in the comments, please speak up so that people attending remotely can hear you, and make sure that you speak directly into the mic so that the recording captures your comment in full. Do we want to address Doc's point of order at this point now? It's just the first. So there was in our packet, I think, Councilmember Davis, may I elaborate on your point there so that it's clear?
Yes.
So in our packet, one of the published comment letters looks anonymous.
They didn't add their name to the document, so I only have the name in their email, which is Joe Sarlo.
Thank you.
Huh? Sarlo?
Sarlo, Joe Sarlo. So he wasn't actually an anonymous, but it appears anonymous in our
So
packet.
I guess I
but-
would say any public comments that they don't have their name and address in the actual comment should either be rejected or amended if they want to have it published, correct?
Yeah, so anonymous comments just simply aren't accepted, so yes.
He emailed it, and I know who he is. Ms. Campfield is aware of who he is because of his email, but then he attached the document as a public comment without adding his name
So-
to the document
And maybe
itself.
we just need to make those rules more clear that their document, like it can't just be an email, it has to be a Word document attached with their name and their address in order for it to be considered to be entered into the record.
Required address,
residency status.
Where the clerk can verify that they're.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that answer your question, Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
When it gets uploaded to the website, can we add this person's name and resident status to it?
I
So
can
it's not fair to have it, I mean, it doesn't, it's flat in the face of our rules to have it, what appears to be an anonymous comment.
Right, yeah, so when you're approving, you could do it tonight and just give formal staff direction to say, when you bring back the minutes for this meeting, can you please ensure that that information is included? So that's one option, is council could do that by motion tonight. Second option is to wait until you approve the minutes and approve them conditionally with adding that language. Either way is the same effect.
I approve that staff, putting the resident status.
Second.
So we have a motion to include that in the minutes, are we saying, or?
I wanted to identify.
Identified.
On the packet that is posted, the packet posted to the website.
So.
Everybody who looks at the packet from now on will know exactly who that person is.
Mhm.
And the resident status, which is indoor rules.
Mhm.
So
So we.
our rules follow itself.
Mhm. So you would like the packet updated to reflect that
Correct. And posted on the website.
and reposted on the website? Okay. Everybody understands what we're voting on? Will the clerk please call the vote for that?
Mayor Pro Tem Algi.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Councilmember Debner.
Yes.
Councilmember Randolph.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. We can then move on to our public comments. You have the floor, Ms. Campfield.
And Clark.
Ann Clark, 4100 Ames Street. Again, we talk an awful lot about development. The town has bought these two properties. One's on Ames Street. One's on Benton Street. Again, if you walk the street, if you walk the alleys, you see the condition those properties are in. You see the maintenance or lack of maintenance on the actual land, property, surface area. They're just a couple pieces of junk. Figure out what to do with them, sell them, figure out a way to reduce how much money we're spending for a period of time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Geneva Kowalski.
Is she's not in the room, is she?
No, she's online.
Oh.
Hi, it's Geneva. 5535 West 43rd Avenue. My first comment is just that overall, it seems like there's a lot of us versus them going on right now, especially in city council meetings and public airing of grievances, which became very apparent in that article that was written. And these personal vendettas are really making a mockery of our small town and also making this political climate unpalatable, as well as a gross misuse of our town's resources, which we've already discussed are limited. While trying to watch a lot of these workshops, I was really disappointed on one of the residences and also somebody that is a licensed architect that has worked not only in Mountain View, but in many of our surrounding communities on commercial and residential property development. It was said during that meeting that the people that did that survey was very limited, and therefore those comments were dismissed. And I took a lot of time putting my professional and personal thoughts into that survey. So I was really disappointed to share that my opinion was dismissed when I put that effort in. And then I wanted to give a comment about the workshop earlier, just that parking requirements such as those are will make it developable in Sheridan. You know this from the property that I'm working on in Wheatridge, which has very similar numbers. So I was happy to share that we are considering reducing those. And then, so let me just remind everybody, investing in real estate, especially around our town, is not losing money. When the order that's currently surrounding our town hall make it absolutely impossible for us to do anything beyond Jefferson County open space programming and building on those lots. So right now we are landlocked where we currently are. It is impossible to expand except to go up. And the other thing for consideration with the parking requirements is our high water table and the lack of being able to go underground. And also ramping makes it essentially impossible to even get spots into a parking structure on such small lot sizes. So that just something else to consider when we're talking about commercial parking requirements. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Have we turned off the public comment mic? Could we turn that off if we have remote comments? Because I'm wondering if that was what was creating some of the difficulty. Thank you.
Is there anyone else online that would like to speak? There's no one else online.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. We appreciate your attendance at these meetings. I know it's difficult to come sometimes. We are moving on to agenda item number 7. It's 8 o'clock. It's 8:06, so we are actually right on time. Would now be a good time for a 10-minute break, or should we continue? Okay, it's 8:06. We will come back at 8:16. Thank you. Okay, so calling the meeting back to order at 8:18 p.m. We are on agenda item number 7. Packet information for agenda item number 7 starts at page 66 of our packet and goes through page 78. And Administrator Campfield has the floor to introduce the resolution.
So this is a resolution to formalize the pothole contract with Coatings Inc. Council gave staff specific direction that they wanted the full repair throughout town, not just the larger potholes. So this contract is for the $9,600 full pothole repair, and it includes the quote that we were provided.
Any questions for staff? Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Go ahead, you have the floor. You have questions for staff on this item?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Didn't have any questions. No.
No worries. Do other council members have any questions for staff or discussion about this item? No. Therefore, we're looking for amendment to approve the resolution as presented. So moved.
Second.
Any debate, any statements for or against? I think it's the right move. Yep.
Prioritizing infrastructure is critical.
Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Bailey,
Yes.
Councilmember Debner,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Algeen,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Randolph.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8. The packet information is starting on page 79 of your packet. And our town attorney has the floor to introduce the resolution.
Thank you. So just really briefly, I believe this resolution was initially an idea from Councilmember Devner about reaffirming fair and transparent campaign practices in accordance with the FCPA. So that's all this resolution is doing. It's just highlighting the town's commitment to following those requirements. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have questions, Councilmember Randolph.
So I need clarification on, let me get to the ordinance, that it says town council. Should it not say town council and mayor? Because if we're doing the governance change eventually, on page 1, it's addressed here on page powers of the mayor. The mayor shall have all the powers of council member, except the mayor shall only vote to break a tie, and the mayor shall possess veto power of ordinances, but this is not in effect now. So I believe it should say and mayor, because you're not, quote, part of the town council.
Yeah, I think it's right to say that the current charter doesn't actually answer that question of whether the mayor is included in town council. And part of the red lines that we'll be discussing in a later agenda item is clarifying that. I think we can certainly add that language.
Thank you.
Councilmember Devner.
I think that's a really great idea, Councilmember Randolph. That will just encompass all elected officials in the resolution, which was, I think, kind of the intent behind it.
Thank you.
I'm in support.
Sounds good to me. So is there a way that we want to write that amendment? We want to draft that amendment?
Councilmember Davis has a question.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes, I have a question regarding FCPA and campaign enforcement. If a candidate places campaign signs before the legally permitted period and leaves those signs posted beyond the legally permitted period and the required removal deadline after the election, what enforcement process applies? And that's the first part. And are there specific fines, penalties for those violations, and who is responsible for enforcing them?
So our code enforcement officers are responsible for enforcing the town's ordinances. Mostly, some ordinances are enforced specifically by your police officers. But this one in particular would be your code enforcement officer principally. The penalties are the general penalties in Title I of the Mountain View Municipal Code. And did I answer all the questions? Or was there another one in there?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Devner?
Yes, so I think you were right that this was originally my idea for a resolution. I was kind of wondering myself when this came up on the agenda. But I have a kind of an additional whereas statement that I think would kind of provide some additional clarity. Largely because, when I read it now, it just says we're gonna recommit to fair, campaign practices, and we want to. So I guess I'll make my motion and kind of read the full statement, and then we can have discussion and maybe a vote on that. Or do we do the discussion first?
I would do the discussion first, but it might be helpful if you just read the recitals now so that council can discuss it before voting on the motion.
Without it actually being a motion, because there's two different items on the floor for an amendment to this resolution, right? One is that we want to add council and mayor. And so when we make the motion, we want to have it be, we
Complete.
move to approve this with these changes. So let's just hear your concepts first.
Okay. So my thought was after the second whereas, we would add, whereas the town council recognizes that informed civic participation is strengthened when residents have access to clear, objective information regarding elections, ballot measures, campaign activities, and applicable election laws, promoting transparency, public trust, and confidence in the democratic process. And then that third whereas would stay the same. And then I would also consider adding a section 2 and a section 3. So the first section is just providing staff direction. And the third section is just kind of clarifying the intent behind the resolution. So section 2 would read, the town council directs staff as resources permit to maintain a publicly accessible election information page on the town's website containing the links to official election resources, election calendars, candidate filing information, campaign finance resources, ballot measure information, applicable election laws, and other factual, nonpartisan educational materials to the extent permitted by law. And section 3 would read, nothing in this resolution shall be construed as supporting or opposing any candidate, ballot issue, ballot question, issue committee, political committee, or political position.
Councilmember Randolph?
So already on the website, there is section 2 with the calendar, all that stuff. Charity was very good about making it available to people that were running. I think it becomes a little bit confusing for residents, but that's just me. I think it's too much information.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Council member, Randolph, could you please get closer to the microphone?
Oh, I'm
having a
sorry.
Very hard time.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Let me just interrupt real quick. Councilmember Davis, did you hear Mayor Pro Tem Algeen better that time?
He said yes.
Great.
Yes, I could hear better. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other reactions to Councilmember Debner's thoughts about changes to the resolution?
Can we just get clarification on what exactly is on the website currently for this?
In terms for the election?
Yeah.
We don't have anything set yet. I'm still waiting for information from Jefferson County to get engaged in the election. The back out calendar doesn't usually start until August. So I'm in the process of moving forward on that.
I was talking about when we were running, when I was running, you had all that information laid out,
So-
which was extremely helpful.
From a clerk's perspective, every election that you are working on, you tend to do a back out calendar starting from election day, and it gives you all the information needed for when nomination petitions have to be submitted, when you have to sign the agreement with the county, all of that. So I'm just now getting to that point because we're at that timeline in the election.
But to Councilmember Randolph's point, you did a great job of that with the last election.
Yes,
And it will look much different this time because we don't have any candidates on the ballot.
right. It's ballot issues.
Yes.
Councilmember Debner?
Yeah, and I guess the kind of the thought behind it. So I was looking at other municipality websites and they have infographics that are really educational. I think the Breckenridge had something where it was like a link to the secretary's website. Maybe even, like a question and answer. I don't know if that'd be permitted legally, like docs questions about signage for.
These are the
political
really
measures.
great things that staff can do when you have longevity in a jurisdiction and it's process improvement.
It's in municipalities like Breckenridge, they have more than one person doing all the administrative lift and more than one election person even. So it's just that the thing when you read that statement, the thing that came to mind for me is it's aspirational. And we I myself personally trust Administrator Campfield as the person to run the election to do the best that she can with the resources and the time that she has. And just knowing that this is a priority of the council, she's heard you. Maybe we don't need to put it into the resolution so that then we kind of accidentally lock her into a requirement that if she doesn't have the time or the resources to get to it, it becomes a problem.
I think this is also internal process improvement, right? So when I was sworn in, it was the day before nomination petition packets had to be circulated. So I worked on a very, very short election timeline last time. So this is very different for this election and it will be very different for the next election coming. And so I think that's really great constructive feedback for what I should be implementing in elections to come when there's time to plan it out, not day one, hit the ground running, elections already started.
I appreciate that. You make a very good point about your timing and, just your available time to put things on the website. So, yeah, I guess the intent behind that was just about future voter education, ballot measures and campaigns, which as a town clerk, as you know, sounds like you're working towards that right now.
Well, and I would appreciate if you sent me that feedback and then staff internally can start working towards some of those goals.
Sounds like that would take more than 30 minutes of your time though, and we should probably get a vote on that. Per our rules.
Yeah, it's I guess, you know, speaking from like stepping into and running a campaign myself, I guess we all kind of did that and stepped into that role. But it was very interesting not having any background in kind of the election process, and it's a lot to digest and understand. So yeah, I guess maybe we can have more conversation about that.
I would say like in a perfect world from a clerk that's in a jurisdiction for a while could say, okay, we're having an election in November, come July, anyone who possibly would be interested in running for a candidate could come do this candidate 101 class with the town clerk where we go over a nomination petition and campaign finance requirements and things like that. So we could give that information to you on a one-on-one basis before you even start getting signatures.
Love that idea.
That sounds wonderful. So I guess I won't make a motion, but this was a very insightful conversation. I'd be curious if any of the council members who haven't like provided input, if they had some.
I mean, I've run under 3 different clerks and it's been a wildly different experience every single time. So it would be nice to have something institutionalized, and I really love the idea of engaging with residents who have just even an inkling of interest to run and serve the community, because it is a very like nebulous thing, and it's like hard to figure out what's all required.
And doing some of this stuff in other jurisdictions, sometimes somebody may be really adamant on wanting to run, and then they get that informational context and they're like, it's actually a lot of work to be a council person, right? And so it gives them a more informed platform to decide whether or not this is a commitment they want to make.
Another good point.
Councilmember Davis, do you have any further thoughts on the discussion?
Not at the moment.
So Councilmember Debner, would you want to still keep your 3rd or 4th whereas paragraph? Do you want to read that again?
The nothing in this resolution shall be construed as supporting or opposing a candidate. And that one.
Is that wasn't there another whereas or?
I just had the first whereas, which was probably more aspirational language about promoting transparency, public trust, and confidence, which I guess is just good governance kind of language. I thought we could add, just so that way, if residents reading the resolution, they have an understanding of kind of the governance mindset behind that.
So are you talking about changing the first whereas or adding another whereas?
I guess we could make it simpler. Supports fair. We could maybe add public trust and confidence in the democratic process.
Whereas the town council and mayor strongly support fair and transparent election practices and
public trust and informed civic participation. That would be kind of good.
Whereas the town council and mayor strongly supports fair and transparent election practices and wants to prioritize public trust and informed civic participation.
Yes, I like that.
So that would be a change to the first whereas clause. And then the second whereas clause would be whereas the town council and mayor are committed to conducting all elections consistent with state law, including the Fair Campaign Practices Act and the statutes. And whereas the town council and mayor desires to reaffirm its commitment to fair and transparent elections. Those are all the changes. How does everybody feel about those changes? Councilmember Bailey?
Could you please read the first whereas again that you had?
It'd be whereas the town council and mayor strongly support fair and transparent election practices and wish to prioritize public trust and informed civic participation.
Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion about that before, I'll read that out for us and then we could do a so moved. So then we're looking for a motion to approve the resolution with the following changes. Adding and the mayor to each of the whereas clauses that include the town council. And updating the first whereas clause to read, whereas the town council and mayor strongly support fair and transparent election practices and wish to prioritize public trust and informed civic participation. Councilmember Debner?
There is another town council in section 1.
Oh,
I think, didn't you say in each instance?
I said in each
Whereas instance.
in each whereas instance. So let's change that. So we're looking for a motion to approve the resolution with the following changes. Adding and mayor to every instance where the town council is mentioned. In addition, updating the first whereas clause to read that whereas the town council strongly supports fair and transparent election practices and wishes to prioritize public trust and informed civic participation.
So moved.
Second.
Any debate, questions for, or statements for or against? Councilmember Debner?
So this is probably a technicality. But when you read the changes to the second whereas, you forgot to mention mayor, but the first thing, I don't know if there'd be competing. I mean, this should be fine from an attorney's perspective. Okay.
Yeah, that was a point of order.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion and a second. We had a point of order. Do we have any debate, statements for or against? Will the clerk please call the vote?
Councilmember Bailey,
Yes.
Councilmember Debner,
yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Algeen,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Randolph.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We are on to agenda item number 9, which starts on page 82 of our packet, and Administrator Campfield has the floor.
So this is something that has been brought up by the council on several occasions, wanting an RFP for IT services, in light of new situations with our current IT provider and the fact that the contract is ending on June 30th. We need to get this approved so it can get posted, so I can get moving on finding a new IT provider.
Questions, discussion for staff? Councilmember Randolph?
I just wanted to thank you, Charity, for adding inventory on the RFP. I think that's very important. And then is there going to be an administrator once we get a new provider?
An IT administrator? That will depend on what kind of responses we get. So eventually our IT service provider will have to be working with town staff in terms of our CIRSA coverage and things like that. So there will have to be someone who fills that type of role.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Debner?
Is that person who fills that role, is that a staff member or from the
No,
IT?
that would be somebody from the IT department. It would be part of the contract.
Councilmember Davis, do you have any questions for staff?
Yes, I would like to ask, what happened with the town leadership to cause onset to terminate the contract?
I don't really know. I haven't had a conversation with them specifically. The letter of termination came after we had asked for a list of all open email addresses.
Well, as I read the letter, it says leadership. It doesn't mention the administrator. So I guess the question is directed toward the mayor. As I read the letter, it doesn't mention the administrator. It mentions leadership.
mhm.
So the question is actually directed to the mayor.
I understand that. I think we need to take their letter as it is. Like, I don't think it would be appropriate for me to add to their letter. I don't know their motives. I don't know their reasons. I know that they wrote the letter. And I know when I read the letter, I was not very happy. But I don't think it would be appropriate for me to read into that letter more than what is actually in the letter. But I think you would be welcome to reach out to them if you want. I mean, I don't know, can council members reach out to a vendor and ask them questions themselves? I don't know how to assist with that.
Typically that funnel should go through your staff.
Mm-hmm. Should we ask them, could they direct the administrator or myself to do that?
Yep.
To investigate further?
Yeah.
So we had emails that were still active of people that were not here.
I mean, sometimes in some jurisdictions, you leave emails active for a short amount of
short
time
time.
after someone resigns, just to be able to monitor it and make sure everything gets forwarded. So that's why you want to do a cleanup every so often to see what's active, what's not. IT is a forever evolving project, especially when you have attrition.
I asked just because I'm used to emails being forwarded to a certain person and that email then kind of off to the side. And then after a period of time, shut down. So I was just curious.
Councilmember Bailey?
I'm just curious what email addresses were still active.
If council would like, based off of Austin's response, we could probably provide a list that staff received.
Sure.
I'd like that.
So do we want to direct staff to provide the list of emails that were still active right before they resigned? Is that what do we want to direct staff to look further into to speak to onset and try to get a better sense of the situation? Mayor Pro Tem?
Do we have a general idea of the cost of having non-essential emails active? Is that monthly? Is that?
It depends on how it's set up in the system. So I would have to investigate that further.
Okay.
It's an annual thing and it's by bulk, so.
Okay.
Council, Mayor Pro Tem?
I just want to recognize the hard work that you put into this RFP. I found it very detailed, it's professional. I was quite impressed with this RFP. So I thank you because I know that right now it's a challenge since our IT is ending at the end of this month to be able to gather that information and put that forward so quickly. I just want to thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bailey?
I'd also like to second that. And also just, there are things I didn't even think about that were in the RFP and I read it and I was like, oh, that's actually a really good idea to have in there. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Devner?
Just to speak about the RFP, it is impressive. The checklist, I mean, this RFP is going to help us find the best IT vendor that will fit our needs. And I'm looking forward to seeing who, throws their name in the hat. I also would be interested in learning more about, why the service was terminated. And I realize we did have a discussion about, requesting RFP in a public meeting. So maybe that was part of it. So I would be interested in that, which point of order, would that be a voice vote or that we would take, or point of information? Excuse me.
It would be, yeah, if we're going to direct staff to do that, we would take a vote. Yeah. how do other people, council member or Mayor Pro Tem? Go ahead.
I have a separate question. Because we're under such a short window, once we start receiving applicants, is that the proper word, applicants for the RFP? How will we determine who's going to determine who's going to select the new IT service?
So I think the RFP was written that there will be a committee.
Sorry, I missed that.
So obviously, I think the police chief needs to be on the committee because of all the sensitive data that he works with. The town administrator, we could ask for one elected official. You could also open it up to any residents that have expertise in this field, but because it's a short timeline, we would like to get that together probably this week, since I've got to get the RFP posted tonight or tomorrow.
Okay, so you're saying that one of us, the chief, the administrator, and potentially a community member who, I'm sorry, say that again,
Who has some expertise in the field
okay.
and make it well-rounded.
Councilmember Randolph?
I think because we're on such a short time factor, I think staff is good doing it, and I'm not real concerned what happened in the past. I think we're so busy, we need to move forward onto other stuff. So I'm saying I don't have an issue if you two do it. You know,
Just the chief and I?
I don't have an issue with that. It's rushed. I think you need to just take care of it.
Councilmember Debner, did you have your hand up next? Councilmember Bailey?
I feel like if there's a council member who has a lot of interest in it, I feel like that and has the availability and can work under the constraints of the administrator and chief, and I feel like they should throw their hat in the ring and be considered. But if they don't have the bandwidth or that their schedules can't line up or whatever, in interest of time, that we can move along with just the administrator and the chief.
Mayor Pro Tem?
And I also love the idea of having a community member who is an expert. If we can get that application, or we can get those applications in as soon as possible, that's a well-rounded group of individuals to get that going as soon as possible. And I love that idea.
Councilmember Davis, any thoughts?
Yes, I'd like to give kudos to the administrator for all her hard work. And I think that the administrator and the chief could handle it. We also have a council member who could handle it. And I think that a resident who's an expert in this field should also be included in this.
In vetting the contracts?
Yes.
In vetting the bids?
Yes.
Well, and it's just the scoring sheet part, right? So we'll provide the scoring sheets of what we perceive were the stronger applicants, and then it all goes to council for final decision anyways.
Councilmember Debner?
So I happen to notice people were suggesting a council member. Would that be me by chance?
Yes.
Sorry, you were the person I was thinking of.
I mean, so when I host sponsor audits, I do get barraged with loaded IT questions about our systems. So I may be able to provide some expertise. I will say IT systems are not, I'm not the greatest at it, but I can navigate some. So if it would work schedule wise, I could participate in the selection committee. If council approves that.
I mean, I think any one of us could do it. I really do. I feel like a lot of us are very detail oriented. I know like Councilmember Randolph is incredibly detail oriented. She could do that in a heartbeat, and I know you could as well. But yeah,
It has to do with IT now. I understand IT. I understand a lot of things, but
you are detail oriented though.
no, I'm very detail oriented, but not IT.
I mean, I for one would support Councilmember Debner being on it if he had the availability.
I second that.
I accept.
So are we gonna form a committee that requires that, or form a committee that if the timeline for our town administrator and our chief of police works out and they can invite him to participate, then it works? Like I would hate to see Councilmember Debner be part of the committee, and then because of whatever reason, like, we can't move it forward.
Yeah, I think the latter for my mind's eye.
Yeah.
And I think the way it will play out is once we get the RFP closed, we'll print the responses and then just set a time where we go through and do the scoring sheets for each of them. So we're not actually interviewing them.
Okay, that makes sense. Councilmember Davis, did you have a comment?
I think if we're crunched for time, that the administrator and the chief could handle the job.
We're definitely crunched for time.
That's, sorry, my biggest concern.
Yeah.
We need to
mine
get
too.
it done.
Yeah.
So basically, I think we're sort of in agreement that we're looking for a motion to approve the RFP as presented and direct the town administrator to post it with the understanding that the committee will be the town administrator and the chief of police and Councilmember Debner as he is available. Does that sound right?
Did we not discuss having a community member involved?
I think the concern with that is we would have to open up applications to all the residents and then sift through those applications
Okay,
in a short amount of time.
okay.
So I think that's what I'm getting from the conversation as to why that was tabled.
Councilmember Bailey?
I feel like there's going to be other RFPs on the horizon, and I feel like when we have more lead time, I really fully support having a resident on the committee, and it will just create buy-in and create a really well-rounded selection committee. I'm worried that we don't have enough time to go through all that right this second,
So
especially since we haven't done that process before.
I will also say that this could be part of the committee discussion we have later as well, right? So if council decides that they want to move towards, having an IT committee or things like that, right? IT committee's in charge of looking at our IT services and like doing an annual audit and then deciding if we need to go to RFP and things, right? So I think that's kind of the precursor to a further discussion on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Bailey?
I did also want to revisit I think it would be helpful to know more about what went wrong with onset so we can not have those same problems rear their ugly head and have another instance where we have to scramble and devote a lot of staff time to figuring out, a new RFP and a new IT system and whatnot. So I personally would love to know what emails were active. And I would personally also love to know, give us some more information on what went wrong and maybe if council supported that, we could have our administrator reach out and see if she could get some information about that.
Mayor Pro Tem, are you comfortable with that staff direction to have the administrator bring forward more information about the emails and more information about what Onset's reasons were?
I would say if the council as a whole is interested and it's something that is within your purview and you have time, then yes.
And Councilmember Debner, are you in support of that?
I am in support of
Both those
just,
things?
it'd be good feedback. It's kind of like an exit interview concept, I think.
Yeah.
So if there's anything valuable that we can glean from it, let's do it.
Councilmember
That's
Randolph?
fine.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes, I'm in support of moving forward, getting
That staff direction?
the administrator and the chief involved on this. We can bring it forward to the public later.
Okay, so I think we have staff direction, just to verbally summarize that. We have staff direction to ask the administrator to reach out to Onset and see if we can flesh out any of those reasons and to bring forward to the next meeting or at a future meeting, additional information about the emails. Okay. Do we need to vote on that or do we just go through that verbally?
Yep, you're good.
We're good. Okay, so then we're still looking for a motion to approve the RFP as presented and direct the town administrator to post it with the understanding that the committee will be the town administrator and the chief of police and Councilmember Debner as he's available.
So moved.
Second.
Any debate, statements for or against? Therefore, hearing none, will the clerk please call the vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Alguine,
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Councilmember Debner,
Yes.
Councilmember Randolph.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous. Thank you. On to agenda item number 10. This is our communications policy, and Administrator Campfield again has the floor starting. We're on page 106 of our packet.
So what you have in the packet is my first draft of a townwide communications policy. I fully expected a lot of feedback on this one, so any red lines you would like to make to it?
Councilmember Debner.
I guess I had one question. So I saw on our website, there was a 2018 social media policy, which looks very similar, but it doesn't quite, it's more detailed. And I think this policy is great. Like, it really is comprehensive, but there is maybe some meat from that older policy that we could add to it.
Okay,
So I guess that was my only thought. If you could maybe
you want to
explain.
beef up the social media piece in the communication.
Yeah, that was my thought, is adding, I don't know if that other policy would be sunset when we adopt this one. Is that the intent behind it? I guess that's my question.
That's the idea. If we brought it forward, at least that's how I was picturing it. We discussed this briefly, that the resolution, if we can agree on the contents of the policy, the resolution would be to get rid of the 2018 policy and pass this.
I have a couple questions.
Councilmember Randolph.
Number 8 on this, it says, avoid excessive personal use of I think of the computers, let me go to page 111, sorry. It didn't make any sense to me. Avoid excessive personal use. That's our laptops and
So that more so applies to staff.
then I think it should say staff, because I've never used a business laptop for personal. Retain important business related messages as required.
So that all is encompassed in your municipal records retention policy, right? So there is an option, right, to put an email retention policy together. Things like that, because without an email retention policy, you technically just have to keep them forever. And then when the news comes knocking on your door, you're digging in 2012 emails.
I would strongly suggest that we add a retention policy.
For
or
email
update it
in here?
Yeah. if
Yeah,
we
so
don't-
we, instead of adding a separate policy, we can add an email retention policy, because I think that's really important that every town has one.
We do have a records retention policy, and in that policy, is there something related to email? It's on our website. If you go to the records, let's see,
So maybe it's just that we need
How
the
do
two to talk
I-
to each other.
make a records request page. And then you go all the way down to the,
Oh, I see it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you define correspondence as emails. So maybe we just want to cross-reference to that policy here and just say, retain all correspondences in accordance with the town of Mountain View's public records retention policy.
so for council members looking for that form on the records request form, it says click here to learn more about the town records policies and procedures. If you click on that, you'll get that policy.
So I just
Councilmember-
wanted to say thank you, Austin, because I think you get to a point where you have so many policies, nobody knows what's going on. You can't find them. They duplicate each other.
Sorry.
Can I circle this
And I'll come
digital
back to you. Councilmember Randolph has the floor.
platform and give it to you with things I think that should be added here? Do you want to go over it? Okay. Cool. Thank you.
What I can do is take all of your recommended suggestions, put them in a red line, and then we can bring it back to council. I think that might be a little more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Councilmember Debner, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to come back to you because Councilmember Bailey was next.
I just want to clarify where it was. So it's under, it's on that sidebar under town clerk treasurer, and it has, records, there's the social media policy there and also the records policy. Is that what both those things?
Those are, that's one way to get to them, yes.
Okay.
There's two other ways to get to them. Yes, that works.
But those are the ones that we're talking about.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying.
Member Debner?
Yeah, I guess from the old policy, I really appreciated the public comments section where it talked about like moderation of the comments, which seems to be missing in the proposed draft. So maybe we could just borrow some of that language because it provides framework to eliminate spam. And there's some types of comments that may show up on our social media. And I guess one question for council is, do we want to define what social media websites we participate in? Is that something that we would want to define in our policies?
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I am so naive to social media that I'm not on social media, but I have heard recently that there is a Facebook page that is identified, I believe, as Mountain View Neighbors or Mountain View Friends. And some of those people that are on that Facebook have shared information. And I guess my question is, I don't believe that is an official Facebook Mountain View page. And I think that some residents are assuming that it could be because they have asked council members to participate in responses. And so if it's not an official, I'm sure you can call any social media platform, whatever you decide, you could call it Mountain View. But how do residents know that that is a personal page? Should there always be a disclaimer? How do we, I really don't know the process. So I'm in the dark about that. And I'd like to be, if we could look at, since we're talking about communication policy, how do we share that information?
There is a disclaimer on that.
Okay,
And that's part of the requirements of that policy.
okay. So it sounds like that's part of the solution is that disclaimers would be provided stating what is the official Town of Mountain View page and what isn't.
Okay. So there is a disclaimer on that Facebook page. And is it posted every time someone goes in or, I mean, I don't understand the process.
I'm not sure. I'm also not on social media. So I'm not a great person.
Councilmember Randolph?
So I guess I need to understand what it is. And if people are saying things about the council on it, I don't think that's correct. I don't think that's good.
But I guess I would just state that the town is fairly limited in being able to restrict speech, that it's when it's not the one speaking. So if it's misleading or false advertising, then we might have some rights. But generally, we're not, as an entity, able to suppress speech, even if it looks similar or somewhat confusing to other types of speech. I don't know if that answers your question.
I understand the freedom of speech. My question is, how do we apply certain policies in regards to what happens if they're are called Mountain View, but they're not associated with the town of Mountain View? How do we, in the communication policy, move forward with that?
So we can certainly state on any official Town of Mountain View page that we label it very explicitly. So we can say that this is the official Town of Mountain View page. All other pages are not associated with the Town of Mountain View. And we can add that into the policy that it will be written in such a way that helps.
I think it's important.
Councilmember Randolph?
So I have a Facebook. I just use it for a game. So you're saying, Austin, I can open up a Facebook as an elected official and put it's not part of Town of Mountain View and then talk about elected officials on it?
Well, there's a couple of issues implicated there. So it would depend on if that content is regulated under a different state law, which in that case, you might have some open meeting law potential issues, but I would need to understand it better. Generally, I think my point was just to state broadly that a page or something on social media could look similar to the town of Mountain View page. And it would be difficult for us as the town to say, hey, you can't do that. Unless again, it's misleading or false advertising or something along those lines. Again, if there's multiple elected officials involved, then we could be getting into a OML issue, but I don't think I understand this issue very well. And so maybe if there's specific question that you could.
Well, I'm not on it. I think a few folks here are on it and maybe they can fill you in.
Okay. And maybe someone or council can direct me with a specific question and I can come back.
Okay.
Just so I can understand the issue a little bit better.
Councilmember Debner?
I guess it sounds like to me the kind of the question is, I mean, it is a small town, small community, so sharing in a, you know, community like forum, like a Facebook group, it could be construed as like an official position of the town. So I guess, you know, legally, is there any options in our communication policies that can help kind of distinguish when a resident and council member is participating in either an official capacity or personal capacity?
Yes, and I'm not sure if it's already in here, so please stop me if it is. Okay, because we can certainly add language if it's not in here already, basically stating any personal account shall not be confused with an official account of the town and shall be clearly delineated as a personal account or something along those lines.
And
That's probably, if that's not in here, I would assume it's potentially in our social media policy.
It's
but I have to
probably in the
double check.
social media policy. I think the question is what language needs to be added to these policies to determine what's an official town account and what's not? Like, is it tied to a private citizen's personal account, but yet labeled as official, versus is it tied to an official town email, making it the official account? I think that's the question that council's trying to ask.
And I think we want to avoid both situations where a official is either using their sort of official email or official title, or stating that this is an official opinion or outlook of the town or anything along those lines we want to avoid.
But in terms of account creation, the owner of the account has to be like a clerk at TUMV.org that set up this account versus somebody's personal email, right?
Yeah, I think that's good to have in this policy too, just to say like official social media policies shall be created in accordance with the following procedure and managed in accordance with the following. And I'm guessing it's just sort of smashing up those two policies that we have today, although I'm not super familiar with either right now. So I'd have to look into them further.
Councilmember Bailey?
Is it an issue though, if there's private citizens who happen to be elected officials who are a member of a non-official neighborhood Mountain View group who are discussing town business as private citizens? I mean, doesn't that constitute an OML violation?
I can't answer that one.
That tells me yes, is basically what that tells me. I left that group because I was like, I was just like, this looks a little weird, so I left.
Let's do this. If you have specific legal questions I didn't answer today, shoot me an email. I don't think it will take more than a half hour. If it does, I'll come back to you and ask for specific direction. And I can get that answer and legal advice out to all of council.
Or if you think that
sounds
there's
okay.
been a violation, you can use the channels to create a complaint. Councilmember Randolph?
I mean, I just heard it was an invite only, and I saw a few of the posts, and I just don't think it was very nice. I just want to state my opinion.
I think we're kind of getting off topic.
Yes.
Some of the
Yeah.
policy in front of us.
I think the most efficient thing to do right now, especially for time's sake, is please send me all your red lines I will compile them into one policy. I will look at the records retention policy for email and the social media policy and try to combine as appropriate. And then hopefully the product I bring next meeting will be closer to something that you can approve with a resolution.
Sounds great. Councilmember Bailey?
I have another follow-on question that's not related to social media, so if that's okay, I'll move on. On page 108 in the scope, it talks about how the policy applies to all town departments, employees, elected officials, appointed officials, committees, boards, commissions, volunteers, and contractors when they are communicating on behalf of the town or using town systems, accounts, or platforms. So I was just curious, do our BOAA members receive official Town of Mountain View email addresses? Then I think we need to adjust this or either adjust that practice because that wouldn't hold them accountable to this. This statement that doesn't hold them to account. So we need to fix that gap. It'd be my request. And I think it makes more sense if they're on the BOAA, they should probably have an official town email and maybe, or like somehow make this apply to them. Would be my suggestion.
I think we can easily set them up with an official town email and then if and when.
You can CC their personal.
Well, no, if and when there was like a necessary BOAA meeting, then all communications for that would go through that email.
Or is there a way to, or is it a cost savings to not give them official emails and have them just use personal, but have it somehow apply?
It's not something I can answer until I start seeing responses to the RFP and how much, how many email addresses we can get as the town for one specific cost.
It makes sense to have if they're doing official town business, to have an official town.
Yes, it does make sense.
Especially for Cora requests and the like too, and just having the public record straight.
Councilmember Debner?
Yeah, I imagine just for record retention requirements, having an official email for the board would be, important. It probably makes retention processes and compliance much easier.
Sounds good. So do you feel like you have enough direction in terms of what to do? And I think she summarized it already. Do we need to have a verbal agreement from everybody at the table? Do you want to summarize it again for everybody?
I will be taking all of your suggested red lines. I will also be looking at the records policy and the current social media policy and implementing it into one document and bring it back for the next meeting that's hopefully ready for approval on a resolution.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
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 Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Administrator Campfield. We are moving on to agenda item number 11. The material in your packet starts on page 117 and our town attorney has the floor.
Alrighty, so this is not the first time you've seen this document and also won't be the last. Really what we're looking for is feedback on the proposed red lines related to the charter. The main substantive change here is that it's moving from strong mayor system to a council manager system. It's also making a couple of other non-substantive wording changes throughout just for consistency, which we can get into the same ballot question. I'm happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback, but I wasn't planning on going through sort of line by line.
I had one quick reminder. I was supposed to remind you to point out that the police department is managed in this version the same way as our current charter.
Yes, thank you.
It isn't though.
In the so there's really three different versions.
That was where I was gonna.
I'll try to make it simpler. So right now, the police department charter section is pulled into a completely different section of the charter. So part of what this is doing is reorganizing, and it's putting the chief of police with all the other appointed officials rather than in their own article. So part of it is just a reorganization. And it's still that they're an appointed official. What's different between this draft and the charter change last, the substantive change, is in the charter change you brought in the last election you brought it. The chief of police was was considered a department head, not an appointed official. I reversed that back to mirror what it is today. That was a change that your former town administrator was very adamant on, and council at the time kind of just went with it. I reversed it back to more closely mirror what you have in your charter today, the chief of police being an appointed official like other appointed officials and subject to appointment and removal in that same manner.
Councilmember Bailey?
So on page 130, when it talks about it's 30D2, hire and terminate from employment all department heads except appointed officials. So that I made a note of that. I was like, wait, does this mean that the administrator can fire the chief? You just said that that's not true. But so where can you point out?
Yeah, so
where the other section
Article 5 is all your appointed officials.
Okay.
And so you'll see the first one there is your town manager. The second one there is your town clerk. We'd be removing the town treasurer position as a part of that. And most of those duties would be subsumed by your town manager. The next one's your town attorney. And then your last one is your chief of police.
Okay, so okay.
Yeah.
It's page 133.
So it's, in my view, actually clarifying what is a just kind of confusing organization right now in your current charter, where all your appointed officials are in one section besides your chief of police.
And Councilmember Davis?
Yes, the question is, when is that deadline?
What deadline?
The deadline for approval?
So the way this would work procedurally is that we would pass a resolution setting the ballot. We'd like to do that by, every clerk's different.
June 15th.
June
Okay.
15th. So soon. So really you'd see this on the next council agenda for official approval for setting the ballot.
The county has already notified local municipalities of their documentation coming out to notify them if you're going to be participating in the coordinated election. So we need to get.
And I might point out, and go ahead, Councilmember Randolph.
I was gonna say, do we need to call a special meeting to make sure we get all this done by the 15th?
No.
Nope.
We worked on the timeline pretty accurately, but we won't have this.
Well, I have one more thing that
Might have gone off. You might need to give you some.
I think all the batteries are dying at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. I have one more thing on page 137, the Planning and Zoning Commission. I talked with Austin about that. Possibly
share your
removing
thoughts?
it. Because it seems like we're just duplicating.
Yeah, and actually we talked about this, I don't know if you remember, when we initially brought this question, we talked about like, should we bring another ballot question at this time and remove all of this language from your charter? And that was my suggestion because typically your boards and commissions, they're done by ordinance, they're not done by charter. So you already have language in there saying like the town council has the power by ordinance to create boards and commissions. So allowing you to do that just by ordinance, amending your code rather than going to the voters, gives you a lot more flexibility through time, but per Tabor, it won't fall under the same subject as this first question. So if you want to do that, we'd be looking at a second question. And I think initially we decided not to do that because we were already running two charter changes and they were touching some of the same sections. So we thought if we add in a third, it's going to be really confusing for folks.
Right.
But in this case, you potentially with that change would only have two changes. And essentially, in my view, what you'd be doing is saying the question will be simple. It'll say like, shall Article 8 of the Mountain View Charter related to boards and commissions be repealed in its entirety to allow for council to approve boards and commissions by ordinance moving forward?
Administrator Campfield, Councilmember Randolph's mic also needs new batteries. It's flashing. If you have a minute, thank you. So how do people feel about running that second question or this ballot? Councilmember Devner?
I guess if we're putting questions to the voters for their decision, I think now's the time, using the conversations that we're having here to provide the opportunity for cleanup. So I guess I'm in support of that.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the charter, it can be a little bit confusing to read. And this is just part of the policy improvement process, really.
Great.
Or I guess charter.
Member Bailey?
My only hesitation with adding a second question is that I feel so strongly about the first question that I almost like just want to zero in and focus on that and like not muddy the water. I mean, I know it's efficient to do that, but I'm just so strongly in support of the governance change that I just worry about adding one more thing might be overwhelming. That's my only concern.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm in support of adding the second question.
Councilmember Randolph?
I thought we had 2 questions last time, if I recall correctly. Yeah.
Councilmember Davis, are you in support of adding the second question to allow for having the boards and commissions created by ordinance rather than in the charter?
No.
So we've got majority support for that.
Okay,
Let's bring it back as a second question.
okay.
Do I then need to go through again and get that was the question.
think
So I'm
so,
just
and
gonna
then we'll summarize
summarize.
the
The
direction after
direction was that we're gonna draft a second question for the ballot, and our town attorney will bring it back with Administrator Campfield adding it to the agenda when we set the ballot. Okay. Are there there was something I was gonna say about this language as well. On page 133, going back to the police chief question. The language in section 5.5, as it's redlined, is still the exact language from our current charter. So it still gives the chief of police direct command of the police department, and he gets to assign all of the members to the posts and shifts and details and makes all of the rules and regulations regarding his department. So it's still very strong in terms of prioritizing that way of doing things.
Right.
Councilmember Randolph?
Could we please date these so we know which current one we have? Just the front page?
I'm not sure I'm following. One more time.
Like on the charter, when it's in the packet, can you just put a date? So if it's coming back on the 15th, we know
So we'll do the revised on,
the 15th, but there's so many, the same thing coming in these packets. It's very hard to keep them straight. If they were
Okay.
dated, it would be helpful.
Sure, yeah.
Councilmember Randolph, I think your mic is still not on. Do you know how to turn it on this?
Yep.
I think it might be this one in the very end. There at the very end, you hold
Okay.
Administrator Campfield, get it.
Charity.
Anything else?
Any other feedback for the red line? Councilmember Deppner?
I guess I just had a question. So it's page 130 of the packet. Talks about how no formal elected official shall be considered for town manager unless 4 years have lapsed. Is the 4 years, is that because of the term? I guess what's the thought behind 4 as the number?
So I actually tell you it's different. So yes, that's, I think, originally why we created that number. And I remember the discussion with the previous town administrator feeling like it was necessary to go a full election term. I will tell you, other jurisdictions do it differently. I have some that do 1 year. But 4 years is one election cycle, so it just takes the whole appearance of, sort of getting ahead politically out of it.
Yeah, it really protects your staff more than anything.
I could see
Right.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Bailey?
This is kind of related, but I just want to, but not like a language change, but just, I feel like we need to be really clear, like that when Mayor Mitchum made the point that like this language about the chief of police is really the language we currently have in the charter. It's just that we're putting him as an appointed official, which he really is, instead of a department head. And so I just feel like that's going to be a really key bit of information for our residents to understand that the town manager is not going to be able to fire the chief. It still remains the council, a majority council vote. So I think that's something we have to be really careful about educating our residents.
Yeah.
Nesbitt, did you have a comment? Okay. So it sounds like we have what we need, unless Councilmember Davis, do you have any further thoughts? I don't want to leave you out accidentally.
No, not at this point.
Okay.
I think we have to move on.
That's where I'm going to. So without seeing any objection, I will move on to agenda item number 12 which is our town committees discussion. Materials are in your packet starting at page 148 and going through 157, and Administrator Campfield has the floor.
Yes, so I put all the information in your packet of current town committees. Really what I'm looking at here is, do we utilize the current town committees? Do you want to keep the current structure we have? Or are there differing committees that the board would like to see?
And to be clear, all of these committees have ended as of, any that were current ended as of April 21, 2026. Because when we appointed them, we said for 1 year term. And that was on April 21st. So currently there are no committees, but these are the most recent committees. I'm pretty sure I read that correctly. So we want to start asking council, do you want to form committees and populate them? Member Bailey?
I loved the idea of having a more standardized type of committee structure because I feel like it's just more helpful. But I also feel like historically the committees have served the purpose of like basically helping staff because we were so short-staffed that council kind of acted as if they were a staff person. And so maybe it would be helpful to hear from you if you think that there are gaps where a committee would be useful. And if that, if that's part of a vision that you have for committees, because that's how traditionally they kind of filled in as almost like staff.
So I don't see committees as filling in for staff. I see committees being more so a utilization tool to bridge the community and council and staff, right? So in other jurisdictions I worked in, your finance committee was encompassed of 3 residents, a board liaison, and 2 staff people, right? So I think the first place to start is, where are the sticking points or the areas in the community that there's a lot of friction? And what kind of committee would help utilize that, right? So do you want a community finance and budget committee where they work with the town treasurer on budget issues before it's brought to the board? A community economic development committee of the types of things they want to see that come from the land use project. So I think that's really the biggest question here is, where do you guys see the friction? And how could a committee help utilize that?
Councilmember Debner?
I guess I'm in support of a finance and budget committee with the residents. That's something that we've heard, time and time again with public comments. And I think just having interested residents participate in that process will help make our budgeting much more transparent. And it'll probably bring a better product to council. I think that just seems like a good idea.
I agree. And I think that we should also have a council member.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So committee structure would be one council member liaison, one dedicated staff person, and then a couple residents. And there would be a full transparent application process where you would have a committee application. These applications would actually be brought to the board, and they would be appointed by the board to these committees to serve a certain amount of term.
I also,
Excuse me.
sorry.
Councilmember Davis, are you able to hear Administrator Campfield when she's talking? I'm worried about her mic still.
Some of it.
I'm wondering. We'll just try to, please let us know if you're
Is
having.
this better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like to see a combination of when we can get there, the events and beautification committees. A combination of the two.
Okay, so let's look at it this way. What current committees has the town had previously that you want to keep? And which ones do you feel didn't necessarily have value?
Councilmember Debner?
Regarding scheduled events for the year, is there, I guess I'm not sure, because the event committee members participated as a volunteer, correct? So, but we no longer would have that need for future events. I guess we could always create a committee for the need at a later point.
You could create a committee for the need at a later point. I think that's an ambiguous one at this point.
Well, we're not gonna cancel the annual picnic. So do you want staff to plan the annual picnic?
I don't know that we've actually had a discussion about
Yeah.
what events we have or are not having.
Canceled.
It's a good
It would
point.
be highly, highly unusual to cancel the annual picnic. We've had it for many, 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 many years. Canceling the other events makes sense, but I was just assuming you would not cancel the annual picnic, but maybe you will. I mean, we're starting to plan it, so we should know. Like,
I think it depends all on the funds that are available.
mhm.
It's all about money.
So do we need to address the events discussion next month when you have April's financials?
That's a good
I think
idea.
probably.
That's a good idea. Councilmember Bailey?
I feel like a lot of these committees they've all kind of served a purpose. I feel like the committees that I've heard residents talk about are like when we did like a townwide cleanup, the historic Mountain View committee was popular with residents. I'm a big proponent of over communicating. So if that could be a help to like staff, I mean, I could see that being a worthwhile committee.
I would say the finance committee is one that is pretty standard. Historic preservation committees are fairly standard as well. Community engagement is a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like the Community Outreach and Development Committee and the Community Engagement Committee are kind of the same thing that was just dissolved and then reenacted.
I also feel like it's hard. It's also you want the messaging. You don't want the messaging to get muddied too. So that maybe in hindsight that isn't the best.
And so I see some of these committees started and then they stopped and then they come back. And so I think if we focus on one or two committees that are relevant to the message that council's hearing in town that the community wants to be involved in, that would be a good starting point of really getting them off the ground and like focusing on that community voice before we try to like reach for the moon.
A lot of times the committees changed when the council changed, and they also changed based on council. Historically, how we did it, it was council would create their goals and then the committees would come from the goals. And so we're sort of flying a little blind here and just talking individually, like what does the council want? What do different council members find valuable? But I think it's really valuable to ask the administrator, what would she find helpful in terms of her workload at this point? And I mean, the events are the biggest one that I'm worried about. That's a big lift. Councilmember Randolph?
I'm just gonna throw this out here. I don't know if it's, since we're doing all this, what about a land use committee? And if you're gonna do forms and stuff, people could pass out information and inform the residents. I don't know if it's a good idea or not.
So like a committee to distribute flyers?
Distribute, you know, you talked about doing stuff, showing how the neighborhood would look.
Mm-hmm.
I might get more people here and involved.
That almost sounds more like community engagement committee.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was talking strictly land use because so many people are not coming. But you
But
could do,
Thinking
the whole thing.
forward, the land use project will come to an end this fall.
Mhm.
So that would be a very short-term committee to get people signed up for. So is there a way that we could, I mean, that's obviously a sticking point in town and there's a lot of frustration with this process. But is there a way to make that committee into something that has longevity? So we're not dissolving a committee within 4 months?
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. I just think that's an important piece.
Yes.
Councilmember Bailey?
I mean, I know you talked about like an economic development kind of committee. I mean, the land use kind of it's folded into the economic development. They're intertwined. I mean, could you do like an economic development type committee? Because I feel like the one of the largest like problems we have right now is that there's a lot of residents who are just upset over the land. We heard from residents tonight who were very upset over the land use planning. And I think if we could engage with them more, that I feel like we could find some common ground.
I think that's a conversation that we might have to table because it's two different things, right? The land use process has somewhat become a little frustrating for the residents. But yeah, I don't know how creating a specific committee would actually help because we may be hindering the work you're doing on the land use process by getting a committee involved, because then the council is going to have the committee direction and then it's going to basically take all the work that we have on a very strict timeline that's DOLA grant funded and kick it back further. And you run the risk of losing your grant funding.
And I guess I would just state, if I could, we have 8 scheduled opportunities for folks to show up. We move back the time based off what council heard was public's preference. If there's other things we need to do to get folks involved, let's do it. But let's do it as a part of that process, not create a parallel one, is my suggestion.
So
Makes
something to
sense.
think about would be like a community charrette where you have a Saturday afternoon where people can come in and have a Q&A session about the land use process with your town administrator, council members, and then you can get them to really have an opportunity to hear their voices.
We could make the June mayor and council forum that it's already scheduled. If we could get staff there to advertise it widely.
Have it at like an open town hall
Mm-hmm.
setting.
Councilmember Devner?
So one idea for a committee would be just kind of like a polling and feedback committee, maybe. I know there was mention about getting, sending out mailers for feedback to kind of gather constituent opinion. But perhaps we could gather that constituent opinion with the official committee too, and then report that feedback. And I'm thinking like door to door kind of thing in like an official capacity. So just curious if anyone had thoughts on that.
One of the things about the committees is that they make the recommendations, but they're not actually, except for in the event or the events committee, which is actually on boots on the ground doing the work. But you'd want to be careful not to have a highly political committee out in the community, right? Without having like that committee could bring forward, say, a draft survey and ask council to approve the survey and how it was going to be implemented, but would need council approval to do that first. So every time you have a committee, the committee's also making work for council. So we want to just think about that workload, because we've already got a very full plate. I would suggest that we look at what's truly necessary right now, given the workload that staff currently has. And we know that the finance committee is not a heavy lift. Administrator Campfield feels comfortable with that, made some good suggestions about that. And I think you were interested in the historical committee as well. Felt like that wouldn't be an additional hardship. I just want to protect our staff from too much more workload, because every committee creates more workload for staff, because they also create a report for every meeting, which then goes into the packet, right? And they meet with staff and interact with staff. So maybe we start just with those two committees. And then we look at the possibility of an events committee after we look at the event schedule when we have the April financials.
Yeah.
And just start small.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah. Let's move forward.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so,
heard a yes from Councilmember Bailey,
yes.
Councilmember Randolph,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you,
Alright.
everybody.
Aren't we supposed to take votes though?
It's just staff direction and verbal agreement there.
Okay.
Are we on the right path?
Mhm.
That was a point of order. And
Okay.
okay,
Thank you.
good. Thank you. So we're going to move on then. We are at agenda item number 13, starting on page 158 of your packet. And so this material goes through page 223 of your packet. And this is in front of council today because the town needs to choose between participation in the Jefferson County Urban County CDBG program. I always want to say CDGBs. CDBG program and eligibility for the Colorado State CDBG program. If council decides to opt back into the county program, we will then bring back a resolution to that effect at the next meeting, because the deadline for opting back in is June 27th. And that will opt us in for 3 years, I'm pretty sure. If council does not want to opt back in, what we'll do is we'll just communicate that to the county and we'll continue to remain eligible for the state funds that are CDBG as we apply for them and meet their requirements. Both programs distribute federal community development block grant funds, but are administered differently and emphasize different project types. The county program tends to prioritize housing related activities and regional county objectives, while the state program has historically been used by small communities like ours for infrastructure and public facility projects. So in my opinion, the decision should be guided primarily by the types of projects that Mountain View expects to pursue over the next several years and which funding source is most likely to support those priorities. So council might prefer the county program if housing is a high priority. Jefferson County specifically noted that housing is one of its top priorities, and the person who I spoke with at the county, Robert Rothstein, emphasized that housing projects tend to be favored and that applications come primarily from developers and nonprofits. They don't receive applications from municipalities themselves historically. If Mountain View wants to encourage housing rehabilitation, accessibility improvements, affordable housing programs, and partnerships with housing nonprofits, then the county program might be the most attractive version of these two programs. The council might prefer the state program if infrastructure is the priority. And this appears to have been the primary reason why council opted out back in 2020 of the county program, because they were prioritizing infrastructure, so they opted into the state program. According to the DOLA presentation summarized in the minutes from that meeting, we went back and looked at the minutes of that meeting when they opted out. The state funding is frequently used for drainage projects, water systems, sewer systems, ADA accessibility, public infrastructure, and public facilities. So for a town like ours, many potential projects fall into this category. And one additional thing I would note is that Councilmember Bailey was on the council in 2020 at the time that the town opted out of the county program in order to pursue state funds. And we did receive grant money from the state that helped with our curbs and gutters on West 41st Avenue. So that was a very wise decision in hindsight. And Councilmember Bailey, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that I went back and I looked at my information from that meeting, and I had it was like a letter with Q&A from Mayor Levy, and it's a table setting, and it just gives you the background. He talked to people, he did the same thing, he did talk to people at the county and the state, and then advise and hope that council would accept that we would pull out of the county program to go for the state program because we were prioritizing the infrastructure. And it's a table setting. So this gives you more background on what went into that decision. And you can't be in both. You can either be in the county and go for state and not go for state, or go for state and not go for county. So.
Thank you.
So when was the
Randolph?
last time we were in 2020 and we got the money for the curbs and we haven't been in since?
We opted out of the county program in
Okay.
2020, which allowed us to apply for state funds.
Okay.
And we did receive those funds, and that's what allowed us to fix those curbs and gutters on West 41st. Councilmember Bailey?
One thing that I don't have the information for is what was enclosed in that table setting, which is about the median income of our households and how that impacts our grant availability. And I don't have that information to make an informed decision about which program would be, make the most sense. We don't have that information.
And what is the deadline, may I ask again? You said?
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I understand Councilmember Bailey's question. Real quickly though, the deadline, we need to, if you want to opt into the county program, we need to bring that resolution at the June 15th meeting. So if you opt in, we'll bring a resolution to opt in at the June 15th meeting. And can you help me understand what was your question?
So in here in your table setting, it says if more than 51% of the households are below the Colorado median income, Mountain View could qualify on an area-wide basis. And Mayor Levy added a note saying that based on the 2013 to 2015 data, Mr. Brown confirmed we qualified as a requirement. I don't know if that is the case now in 2026. So I don't have an answer to that question. And then there's other questions in here about how, and then he talks about additional loans, and he made a note in here, we probably won't be able to attain additional loan funding using this enterprise fund due to our existing stormwater and wastewater project loan. And he talks about how he asked, how would we ascertain whether 51% of the town's residents are below the Colorado median income? And it appears that he adds a note saying, or there's an answer saying it appears that Mountain View is 59% low mod, so would qualify on an area-wide benefit. And then in parentheses, a good thing. So do we know what we would qualify for? And if those same qualifications exist between the two programs?
So you're concerned that if we don't opt into the county program because we're counting on being able to apply for CDBG funds from the state program, we might not qualify for those funds because we have different set of criteria.
Yeah,
now than we did in 2020.
I can't really compare apples to apples with the information I have.
What do you think, Administrator Campfield?
Do you want me to look into these facts and bring it back for the next meeting?
I mean, I feel like that would be wise.
Councilmember
I
Randolph?
believe the medium income was on the first, when the gentleman presented their stuff, there was something about the income.
I don't know where Mountain View is.
I'm sorry, can we not?
It was
speak over
Mountain
each other,
View, I
please,
think.
and let's ask for the floor.
I thought it was Mountain View.
Yes, I think that finding the median income is a fairly straightforward question.
It's pretty
But I
easy.
think the qualifications that DOLA requires is the bigger question, right? We don't know what those CDBG funds from the state
Cool.
program require at this point, because we haven't looked in that in detail. Councilmember Debner?
Just with the situation that the state budget is in, I'd be interested in, what is the availability of funding from that program? So I guess I'm in support of bringing this back with more information.
I agree.
Makes sense.
Okay, so sounds like we have agreement. I'm gonna get a verbal agreement from everybody as well, summarizing the staff direction to ask Administrator Campfield to investigate the DOLA CDBG funds and what the requirements are, what the likelihood is that we could in fact qualify for some of those funds if we continue to stay out of the county program. Does everybody agree that's the staff direction? I'm gonna ask Councilmember Bailey first and we'll go around the table.
Yes.
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 Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Thank you. We will move on to agenda item number 14. Is our minutes discussion. Starting on page 224 of your packet is the material, and Administrator Campfield has the floor.
I think you guys have seen this memo once before in April. It breaks down the 3 different types of meeting minutes and what my recommendation would be. I know Austin could probably chime in on some of the legal issues with like verbatim minutes. What's happening now is because most meetings are recorded and you can get the transcripts offline. More and more jurisdictions are just moving towards action minutes, which means it's just going to show the reflection of the vote because the record will be your recordings that everyone's accessible to. So right now, I'm just wanting clarification. Do you want to move towards action minutes while you have the streamed videos online, or do you want to continue with the summary minutes? I will say with summary and verbatim minutes, it's a little difficult because there can be some sort of narrative behind it, where action minutes, it just tells you what the vote was, and then people can listen to the recording and kind of decipher for themselves what happened.
Councilmember Randolph?
What happens if we don't have a recording? Which happens frequently, it seems, occasionally, yeah.
I think that's part of staff responsibility to make sure that the recording gets online, or if it's requested, it can be provided to whoever's requesting it.
But when it doesn't record, or you can't understand it, that's what I'm asking.
I mean, technology does fail, so that is something to consider with this proposal.
Councilmember Debner?
I'm in strong support of action minutes. The transcripts are available on YouTube pretty easy. And I think it's an excellent draft and great guideline. So thank you for all the hard work.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I'm also in support of action minutes.
Councilmember Bailey?
Same.
I'm in support of them. I just want to ask the question, because I know that Austin said at some point that if we didn't have a record, a video, action minutes were not quite legal because it didn't say anything. So I just ask a lot of questions, but I'm in favor of it.
Let me hear from Councilmember Davis. Are you
I'm in favor of action.
Wonderful. Councilmember Debner, you had something further?
I just want to, it was historically an issue that maybe not all recordings were available or had issues. But with our new system, it seems to be working really well. And especially with having the video on YouTube, it's fantastic for meeting prep.
So do we need to bring this back as a resolution to formally adopt that, or can we just have a motion to direct staff or consider that staff direction to use action minutes from here on out?
Yeah, I think you can just give formal direction.
Okay, so I think we've heard Councilmember Debner, you have further thoughts?
Would it be wise for council to consider adopting the meeting minutes guide as a formal resolution just for continuity?
Well, but the meeting minutes guide is based off of summary minutes.
So I guess, would that be updated for action minutes or probably not?
So the meeting minutes guide is an internal document that staff uses to create the meeting minutes. So it would just be another update to a procedural internal process.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have staff direction to start using action minutes here on forward for all special and regular meetings. And that it doesn't need to come back as a resolution. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
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 Councilmember
Yes.
Davis? Great, thank you. We are at 9:56. Agenda item number 15 is our council complaint. And so I'm going to recuse myself from the table for the duration of the meeting through adjournment and let our Councilmember Bailey chair the rest of the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Next time.
Thank you, Mayor Mission.
Whoops, sorry. And let the record reflect that Mayor Pro Tem Algini is also self at, can you say the time?
9:56 PM.
Austin, are you leaving? I have one question for you.
Oh, sure, yeah.
She coming back? Or is this the last item?
No,
Okay,
yeah.
I guess I'll just.
Last item.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have before us a complaint against Mayor Mitchum from resident Melinda Plimmel. And so all we need to do here is determine whether we believe if the complaint is we consider the complaint to be true if it's violated the rules. That's my understanding. And then if we believe that to be true, we will then vote to yes, to pass it to the magistrate, or no, that it's frivolous and we will not pass it along. Anything I'm missing? Okay, do we want to have any we don't really need to have a discussion because we're just voting, right? Councilmember Randolph,
Yes.
Councilmember Denver,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yeah.
and I also vote yes. So the complaint will pass to the magistrate. And then I think that's all. So being there no further business before the council, I adjourn the meeting at 9:58 PM.
You guys.